The dorm room was getting stuffy. Without an open window, the air had grown thick and a little funky. Sean looked embarrassed. He'd been running around for 2 days, and his sneakers were radioactive. You couldn't even call them knockoffs. A knockoff at least tries to imitate the real thing, a one-to-one copy. Other people wore Nikes. Sean wore Nikes. The person who'd made them apparently had a sense of humor. Sean had discovered one day that his shoes weren't even a proper counterfeit of Nike. The label was spelled with a Y. He'd even looked it up. The word, he found, had multiple obscure meanings, including an ancient river in some forgotten country and a species of hairy beast. His shoes weren't even good enough to be fake. The ridiculously copyrighted Nike athletic footwear was, however, shockingly durable. He'd had them for years, and the soles were barely worn. The only problem was the smell. He had no idea what materials they used, but the stench was otherworldly. He'd already placed the offending shoes by the door. To their credit, the guys in Leo's dorm were genuinely good people. No one ever gave Sean a hard time about things like this. And Sean, for his part, was diligent about hygiene. He wouldn't knowingly let something that foul just sit there. When Leo got back, Jordan, for the first time in recorded history, wasn't playing a game. The League of Legends client was open, but he was busy, messages flying back and forth. For some reason, a bunch of people from the film crew had started hitting him up. Alex was busy too. A quick glance at his phone screen revealed a selfie of a young woman. Alex Young, a man of unimpeachable moral character. Not only was he loyal to sophomores, he was also open-minded. Any sophomore would do. But Sean was the busiest of all. He was scrolling through the comments on his latest TikTok, a video he'd edited from their fishing trip. The feedback was mostly positive. It had come out as a fun, light-hearted educational video. He was getting the hang of this. His earlier attempts to force a cute but tough contrast had sometimes been awkward because you couldn't manufacture those moments. Now he just cut together a simple video, and the audience response was great. People liked it, found it relaxing. He saw that as progress. If you could hold an audience without relying on gimmicks, that's when you were really onto something. Viewers attracted by cheap tricks were fickle. They'd swarm in and swarm out just as quickly. Yesterday's comments were mostly great. OMG, that Sichuan-style poached fish. I need a bite, just one bite. Fishermen never get skunked. Sea fish are so dumb. If I eat them, will I get dumb too? Of course, there were a few bad apples. Wow, a yacht in deep-sea fishing. Here comes the rich kid flex. I bet he's going to start selling merch next. 3, 2, 1, drop the link. If he doesn't, I'll eat my hat. A well-meaning fan tried to defend him. I think the roommate is great now. Didn't we see him wearing a Rolex in an older video? That was way too flashy. That comment immediately shot to the top because the replies were gold. A Nautilus? Patek Philippe is crying in a corner. A Rolex is flashy, but a Patek is low-key. El Mayo, we got a live one here, folks. Reel her in. That's a Nautilus. IP address, Zurich, Switzerland. The TikTok audience really was from every corner of the globe. Another comment read, you can catch fish with a metal jig? I'm new to this, don't lie to me. IP address, Tristan da Cunha. Sean curiously Googled Tristan da Cunha and discovered it was a remote island nation in the South Atlantic. People really get around. The video's traffic was surprisingly good, hitting a small peak with over 60,000 likes. Unbeknownst to Sean, the algorithm had pushed it to some of the people in those elite social circles, people who had seen the original video of Judge Cole fishing. When they saw this new video, they could connect the dots. They also wouldn't think the creator was just chasing clout. A real clout chaser would have made sure to get Judge Cole in the frame from every possible angle. But this video kept the judge completely hidden. You could barely see him, and the caption just said he went fishing with an elder. It was incredibly discreet, but the right people noticed, and they remembered the roommate chronicles. There's that theory, 6 degrees of separation, that you can connect to anyone in the world through just 5 other people. Unless you live completely off the grid, you start to notice the coincidences. This video even made its way to Richard Vance. Not that he was scrolling TikTok, he was far too busy for that. His wife, Victoria, was the one who saw it. She didn't follow the account, but the algorithm, noting her viewing habits, kept pushing the videos to her feed. When he was home, Richard Vance was more than willing to humor his wife, watching TikToks with her the way he'd watch a TV show, offering his commentary. And that's how he saw the video. The young man fishing the video had an effortless calm about him. There was clearly a powerful figure on that boat, yet the kid wasn't the least bit nervous. Judging by the sounds, their relationship seemed genuinely warm. Richard was surprised. He'd dealt with men of that stature before. The sheer force of their presence could make most people crumble. But this kid was completely at ease. It made him a little curious. If his daughter wasn't such a terrible liar, He might have suspected she was dating the scion of some powerful family. But for now, Richard Vance had no intention of interfering. You can't teach people life lessons, especially not about love. His daughter had to experience it for herself to understand. He felt that his own success came down to one simple thing. He always let logic override emotion. Right now, Sean was trying his best to let logic override emotion, too. Some of the comments were personal attacks, vicious and bizarre. Haters, he guessed. They were dedicated, too. From the very first video of him organizing the dorm, where they'd called him an ugly loser, to the one of him horseback riding, where they'd wish for him to be thrown and permanently disabled, to the fishing video, where they accused him of luring people out to sea to have their organs harvested. It was hard not to let that kind of malicious speculation get to you. Beyond the hate, there were the endless collaboration requests from people who wanted free work, or those who offered decent money to promote products that were obviously scams. 3 giant bottles of skin whitening, spot-removing serum for just $36. One offered him $10,000 just to apply it on camera. Temptation on one side, abuse on the other. It was the gauntlet any ordinary person had to run to succeed. And for ordinary people, the difficulty was always set to hard mode. Sean forced himself to ignore it all and looked again at the message his father had sent to the family group chat earlier. It was a picture of a small, homemade wooden flatbed on wheels, pulled by a rope. It was stacked high with cardboard boxes, plastic bottles, and tin cans, a pile of recyclables taller than a person. His dad's text read, "Sean, I figured out how to make this little cart. A lot of the roads are flat, so I can just pull it instead of carrying everything. It's very convenient. Don't worry about me. It's easier than work back home." The heavy, towering heap of junk nearly crushed the small wooden cart beneath it, making it look like a self-propelled pile of trash. Sean could perfectly picture his father bundling it all up, tying the ropes, bending over, and pulling that cart down the street. He took a deep breath. He couldn't think about that now. He had to focus. He started editing. A day in the life of a film extra. The job. He included shots of various equipment and a clip of himself playing dead, lying on the damp cold grass. The food, a shot of him getting his lunchbox, then another of him eating quickly in a quiet corner of the set. The perks. He flashed the selfie he'd gotten with Cassidy Lane. The reward, and finally, the signed internship form. He was heading back to campus, happy and fulfilled. Fun trip. Would do it again. The video was upbeat and charming, with a quirky, playful soundtrack. It had the feel of a silent film. He was happy with it. He sent it to Leo for a final look. If Leo approved, he'd post it. Leo got the video and thought it was great. It showed his time on set, but revealed nothing about the movie itself. The shot of him playing dead was filmed from behind his head. The clip of Cassidy was beautiful and clean, her eyes radiating a genuine warmth. Her skin looked incredible, too, and Sean had a knack for capturing a sense of realism. It looked like a candid shot, making her natural beauty even more stunning. The 2 actresses playing the handmaidens were new and weren't shown clearly. Alex, who had insisted on staying off camera, didn't have his face shown in the lunch scene either. Leo thought it was perfect. He forwarded it to Director Hayes and Cassidy Lane. The rainy day turned dark in an instant. It felt like there was no transition at all. One moment, Leo was forwarding the video to Penelope and Cassidy, and the next, he looked up and the world outside the car was black. It was as if no more than a second had passed. It wasn't even 6 o'clock, and the streetlights hadn't come on yet, making the darkness outside feel absolute. The brief distraction helped ease the tightness in his chest. Ms. Miller seemed to have turned down the AC. The display read 72 degrees with a moderate cooling breeze. The air was still sweet, but it was enough to clear his head a little. He figured her taste in air fresheners matched her taste in flowers. He remembered bringing her 2 bouquets of lilies the last time he'd visited her house. They had bloomed beautifully, their fragrance filling the room. He'd only bought them because they were affordable yet presentable. He never expected she'd genuinely love them. He had pictured her as more of a daisy or white rose person. It just went to show you couldn't pigeonhole someone. Looking at her now, with her chic, polished style, elegant, professional, with a hint of sexiness, he thought about the old saying. 3 things cannot be long hidden: the cough, poverty, and love. He decided sexiness should be on that list, too. The cool air helped his thoughts settle. The darkness outside no longer felt so suffocating. They pulled into the faculty housing complex, and he went to the trunk to move a large bag of grapefruits into Ms. Miller's car. Then, he grabbed 4 for himself and walked them over to the security gate. Mr. Roberts was there, waiting for his shift to end. The man was punctual to the second. The moment the clock struck, he was gone. He was happy to see the grapefruits Leo brought. My wife loves these, he said. She was just saying the weather's turning cool and her cough is acting up. She wanted to buy some. The peel is great for making a tea, works wonders on a cough. He thought Leo was a good kid, thoughtful but not ostentatious. A fine young man. Leo said his goodbyes and left. He still had to go with Ms. Miller to President Grant's apartment. Once the grapefruits were loaded, Ms. Miller started the car again, with Leo still in the passenger seat. The car was cooler now, but the scent lingered. Leo was curious about President Grant. The legends surrounding her were numerous. Some students went to colleges that ended up shutting down before they could graduate. Leo's peers, on the other hand, were at a university whose rankings seemed to climb every semester. It had started low, but it had momentum. Some predicted that by the time their class graduated, Northwood State might even jump from a second-tier to a first-tier university. When Leo was a freshman, it was just a regular state school. Now it was considered a top-tier one, and this year's admission scores for several majors had surpassed those of more prestigious universities. Some students worked hard to get into a top school. The students at Northwood had the chance to become a top school by virtue of the school working hard for them. It was like slogging away at a dead-end job, only to wake up one day and find out your parents had struck it rich and you were suddenly a trust fund baby. There were 3 hard requirements for a university to achieve that top-tier status: educational standards, campus resources, and public recognition. The school needed to be authorized to grant doctoral degrees. It needed nationally recognized departments, labs, and research centers. And its students needed to win major awards, with the university itself receiving excellent ratings from the Department of Education. Northwood State, quietly, was already more than halfway there. President Grant was a legend. A career-focused Iron Lady, unmarried, no children. The fact that Northwood had been able to attract titans like Professor Reed and renowned figures like Professor Hoffman, even when it was just a run-of-the-mill school, showed that President Grant had been playing the long game. And now, she was more than halfway to victory. For Leo, it meant that staying here for graduate school was becoming a very attractive option. If Northwood made the leap, getting his PhD here would be a solid path. Some people fight their way upstream their whole lives. Others just happen to be sitting on an elevator that's already going up. But that was all a long way off. For now, he needed something to talk about. How are things with Sean's family? Ms. Miller asked, breaking the silence. The university's student aid program was approved. His sister can get up to $150 a month. I had the staff transfer the first payment to her bank account. It should be a monthly deposit from now on. Okay, thank you, Ms. Miller. The last time she'd mentioned it, he'd assumed it would take ages. University bureaucracy could drag things out for weeks. He hadn't expected it to happen so quickly, and he thought she'd said it was $100 a month. Even that seemed generous. Now it was $150. The extra $50 felt like a huge bonus. Leo realized it was a clever management tactic. Underpromise and overdeliver, and people will be even happier. It was nothing. Don't thank me. You should really thank my aunt. She's impatient. She has a 3-day rule for everything. Any request has to be approved within 3 days, no delays. If it takes longer, you have to give her a reason. Over time, it's made everyone incredibly efficient. President Grant didn't live in the newer faculty housing. She was in one of the old buildings closer to the administration offices. Ms. Miller made a couple of turns, and they were there. Her apartment was on the 3rd floor. No elevator. No wonder she'd asked for his help. But still, the president of the university, living in a walk-up? That was some serious dedication to leading by example. Ms. Miller had been to her son's grandparents' house, her family home, and was bringing back a trove of local specialties for her aunt. Tea and a special sweet chili powder from their hometown that was probably 20% chili and 80% sugar. You couldn't find it anywhere else. The mind changes as you get older, but the stomach remains fiercely loyal to the foods of your youth. A stomach's loyalty runs deeper than the heart's. Ms. Miller knocked, then used her key. President Grant wasn't home, and the old building still used traditional locks. She had a spare. Leo followed her in, carrying the bags. It took him 2 trips to get everything upstairs. He probably could have done it in one, but Ms. Miller had insisted he split the load, worried it was too heavy. Maybe he looked pale today. Running up and down 3 flights of stairs twice did leave him a bit winded. He'd overestimated the resilience of his young, collegiate body. On the second trip up, as he bent down to set the bags on the floor, a sharp pain lanced through his chest. He couldn't help but let out a soft groan. It was a good thing he wasn't one of those people who use shit as a verbal tick, or he'd be cursing up a storm right now. What's wrong? Ms. Miller was organizing the items when she heard him. She turned to see him straightening up, his face pale, one hand pressed to his chest. It scared her. To be honest, she felt a bit awkward in the car. It was a small space, just the two of them, and she found it hard to look at him. But she'd had a glance at the rearview mirror, which meant she couldn't avoid seeing him. He had seemed a little on edge, too. She made small talk, mostly because she felt a little guilty. It was perfectly normal for a teacher to ask a student for a little help, and plenty of students were happy to oblige. She told herself it was normal, that she wasn't doing it for any other reason. But now, had she actually injured him by asking him to do a little manual labor? His expression wasn't fake. Even his lips had lost their color. Ms. Miller was terrified. Quick, come sit down. Leo figured it must be a side effect of the soulful gaze buff suddenly kicking in. His body probably thought it was still injured and shouldn't be doing heavy lifting. Moving those bags had triggered a phantom pain. He didn't argue. He did as she said, sinking into a lounge chair. It's probably just a pulled muscle in my chest. I'm fine, Miss Miller, he explained. A buff side effect was too weird to explain. This was the only plausible excuse. Seeing how pale he was, clutching his right side, she felt a pang of regret. Kids these days were coddled. She shouldn't have let him carry so much. He was probably just trying to act tough in front of her, and she believed him. Just lie back, don't move. Let me see. Does it hurt here? She leaned over him, placing a hand on his left pectoral muscle. The sharp pain flared again, and he winced. I know some basic massage techniques, she said softly. I'll help you. If it's just a cramp, we can work it out. It might hurt a little, so just bear with me. Laura Miller bent over, pressing both hands onto his chest. Don't, Leo started, trying to sit up, but he was surprised by her strength, and lying down, he had no leverage. Don't move. Just a little while. It'll be over soon. Leaning over was awkward, so Ms. Miller simply knelt on the floor beside the chair, focusing on her work. She pressed and kneaded the area where his chest met his ribs. Leo wanted to explain it was just a buff, not a real injury, but he didn't know how. He hadn't had a chance to look around President Grant's apartment before, but now, lying back, he could see it all. It was spacious, with high ceilings typical of older buildings. A green plant served as a screen, and there was a desk, a reading nook. It felt cozy. One wall was covered in awards and photographs of the president. The large portrait in the center was the same one that hung in the administration building, severe, with deep laugh lines and short hair. But this one was behind glass, and in that glass, Leo could see his own reflection, lying in the chair with Ms. Miller kneeling beside him. From the reflection, he could see the back of her kneeling form, curved like an hourglass, and he could see the front of her directly. Inside, she had taken off her jacket and was wearing a form-fitting knit dress. President Grant's apartment smelled of sandalwood, a scent that was serious and dignified. But it couldn't mask the sweet, cloying fragrance coming from the woman so close to him. Leo didn't know why, but a searing heat spread across his chest. The entire situation felt absurd. He was lying on a lounge chair in the university president's home, while Ms. Miller knelt beside him, giving him a massage. It was absurd, and it was unbelievably thrilling. He felt as if at any second the door would open and the president would walk in. It was getting close to closing time. He could hear footsteps in the hallway outside. Does it still hurt? Any better? Laura's pressure was firm. She had actually learned this. Her ex-husband, when he was starting his business, would come home exhausted, complaining of aches and pains. She had seriously studied massage therapy to help him, sometimes working on him for an hour or two at a time. A pulled muscle isn't just in the chest. I'll work this whole area. She worked her way from his chest down his arm. She didn't look at him. She didn't dare. She just kept her head down, holding his arm, stroking from his shoulder down to his palm. She began to knead the palm of his hand, her touch firm, as if pressing on a specific pressure point. When she hit the right spot, it actually hurt, sending a tingling sensation all the way up his arm. Ms. Miller really knew what she was doing. She was a professional. He shouldn't be having these thoughts. A key slid into the lock, turned, and with a decisive click, the door opened. President Grant, the master of this domain, stepped inside. Instantly, the very laws of physics in the room seemed to snap back to their default settings. She already knew her niece was here dropping things off. She had told her to let herself in, as she was running a little late. Laura had mentioned she'd asked a student to help with the bags. So, the young man must be the student helping her niece. Helping with bags was one thing, but making the kid clean and wipe down tables? That was going too far. President Grant felt she needed to have a word with Laura. Students were here to learn, not to be used as free labor. She'd heard of professors at other schools who treated their students like indentured servants, but that would not happen here. However, she wouldn't scold her in front of the student. That would only provide a moment of satisfaction for herself, while undermining any real lesson. It would likely have the opposite effect. She'd wait until he left. You don't discipline your children in public. President Grant graciously thanked the young man, asked for his name and major, and when she heard the grapefruits were from his family's home, she thanked him again before letting him go. When her niece tried to leave with him, she stopped her. Leaving President Grant's apartment, Leo's heart was hammering against his ribs. He couldn't explain the thrill of that moment. His adrenaline had spiked so high he felt like Spider-Man, ready to scale a wall. It was intense. Too intense. Now, even walking down the stairs, his legs felt a little weak, and his mind was blessedly silent. No walk thrusts, no relationship points with the president. She was single, but her score must have been below the 60-point threshold. For the first time, he was grateful for the system's silence. It was better not to be on her radar at all. In the split second before the door opened, he had shot to his feet, pulled out a tissue, and started wiping the coffee table. Ms. Miller, beside him, had started arranging the jars of chili powder. Their movements were so synchronized they could have practiced it 1,000 times. President Grant's powerful presence was like a force of nature, obliterating every trace of the previous atmosphere in the room. It was so absolute that Leo began to wonder if the whole thing had been a hallucination. Only the lingering ache in his chest reminded him it was real. But after that jolt of adrenaline, the side effect of the buff seemed to have vanished. His chest no longer hurt. It was as if the president's arrival had exorcised whatever phantoms were plaguing him. All that remained was the dull, surface-level soreness of a deep massage. He stepped out of the old apartment building. The streetlights were on now, casting a glow on the wet pavement. The drizzle had stopped at some point, but the air felt even colder than it had this morning. The temperature had suddenly dropped. Winter had finally remembered it was supposed to be cold. Leo figured he might as well finish his deliveries. He took some grapefruits to Professor Reed and Dr. Croft. The fruit wasn't expensive, but it was the thought that counted. Professor Reed looked at the lumpy, yellow grapefruits with a nostalgic expression. I haven't seen this kind in years, she said. All you find in the market now are those big, perfectly round ones. But these are the ones that actually taste good. I remember eating them as a child. They're a little tart, but they have so much flavor. Dr. Croft was there, too, clearly sensitive to the cold. Her apartment was warm and cozy, the heat already cranked up. After dropping off the gifts, Leo jogged over to the women's dorms to give a few grapefruits to Stella. Her dorm had 4 people, so he brought a few extra. They were ugly and yellow, but surprisingly heavy. Because of the sudden cold snap, Leo decided against asking her out tonight. Most of their dates involved walking around outside, which was out of the question now. In the winter, they'd have to find new spots. No wonder so many couples ended up migrating to unromantic places like the cafeteria or the library. It was just too cold to be anywhere else. He waited until he was standing under the awning of her dorm building before texting her. He knew that Stella, ever considerate, would have come downstairs early to meet him if he'd texted sooner, and he didn't want her waiting in the cold. For all her wealth, she was less delicate than most girls he knew, a testament to her upbringing. But the weather had turned on a dime, and he didn't want her to catch cold. Sure enough, he saw a figure come running toward him. She had thrown a large coat on over a full set of long-sleeve pajamas. Even the main entrance was a short walk from the actual dorm rooms. Why are you wearing so little? Aren't you cold? Stella asked, looking at his simple tracksuit. He was a little chilly, but jogging over with the heavy bag had warmed him up. Seeing her hair slightly messy from running, made his heart soften. He had a sudden urge to hug her. But the massive floodlights at the entrance to the women's dorm were on, bathing everything in a harsh glare that left no room for shadows and turning the misty air into a shower of colorful sparks. I brought you some grapefruit from my hometown, he said, handing her the bag. They might be a little sour. Take them and get back inside before you get sick. Okay, you get back too. Put on more clothes, she said, noticing his nose was a little red and his hair was beaded with tiny droplets of rain. They didn't linger at the busy entrance. It was a simple exchange, one person giving, the other receiving, and then they parted ways. Leo figured that was everyone on campus taken care of. He'd bring some to Professor Hoffman later and ask him if Judge Cole might want any. His mom had really sent a lot. He carried the last bag back to his dorm, walked in, and collapsed on his bed. He was exhausted. He hadn't even done anything particularly strenuous, but he felt completely wiped out. He'd only meant to lie down for a minute, but he rolled over and was instantly asleep. Stella carried the heavy bag of grapefruits back to her room. As she reached the door, she could hear arguing inside. It's one thing to act all generous in front of guys, but why are you putting on a show for us? Does the princess really need a few bucks from you? Now that you've paid, it makes the rest of us look bad. We all know what you're really like. It was Jessica's cold voice that replied, whether you pay or not is your business. I was just paying my share. When Jessica had come downstairs earlier, her other two roommates had transferred her money for breakfast. She hadn't thought anything of it. If $6 was all it took to see someone's true colors, it was a bargain. She never expected it to blow up into a fight. Stella knocked on the door. The argument stopped instantly. The roommates looked awkward. They hadn't expected her back so soon. Seeing her dash out with just a coat thrown on, after quickly applying some lipstick, they'd assumed she was meeting her boyfriend and would be gone for a while. You don't put on lipstick to pick up a package. But she had returned as quickly as if she'd just run to the mailroom. They saw the plain bag in her hand, its contents clearly visible. No luxury goods, just a bunch of grapefruits. She brought them in and set them on the desk. They were heavy enough to leave red marks on her hands. She placed them down and took a sniff. The natural, fragrant scent of grapefruit filled the air. It was nice enough to put one on her nightstand. She liked eating grapefruit, but she'd almost never peeled one herself. Most of the time, the housekeeper had prepared it for her, or she'd bought it pre-peeled. With her arrival, the argument vanished, and a fragile peace returned to the room. They were always like this. They could have a screaming match one night and be calling each other honey and babe the next morning. Grapefruits. Help yourselves if you want some, Stella announced. Thanks, sweetie, one of the other roommates said with a smile. Jessica saw the fruit and knew it must have been from Leo. Stella never accepted things from just anyone. Unlike her, Stella chose the best-looking grapefruit, wiped it with a tissue, and placed it on her nightstand as planned. Then she prepared to peel another one. She wasn't quite sure where to begin, but it was a gift from Leo, and she felt she had to at least try it. She didn't want a repeat of the painting incident, where she'd given it to her mother without even looking at it, leading to that whole misunderstanding. When Leo had asked if she liked it, she had lied and given a vague, polite yes. She was determined to actually try the grapefruit. Truth be told, she rarely did things like this for herself. She held a knife over the grapefruit, pressing down on it as if it were a chicken, unsure how to proceed. She sliced off the top part, but the cut only revealed the thick, white pith. She cut again, deeper, but still hadn't reached the flesh. The rind was so thick. As she prepared to make a third cut, Jessica spoke up from the side. Let me. Stella saw her outstretched hand and passed her the knife. With effortless grace, Jessica made a single cut, just deep enough to reach the fruit. She then scored the peel vertically a few times, slid a metal spoon under the rind, and quickly separated it from the flesh. She moved with a swift, practiced ease. In moments, the grapefruit was a collection of full, juicy segments, the white pith expertly removed. She arranged them on a plate like a blooming flower. Jessica did all of this in silence. She had once worked at a large restaurant where she was in charge of the fruit platters served after dinner. On a busy night, she could prepare over 180 of them, so she was fast and good. Your hands are amazing, Stella said with genuine admiration. It's so beautiful, I almost don't want to eat it. She herself was too lazy to peel them. She hated the sticky feeling and the lingering smell on her hands. But she noticed that after all that work, Jessica's fingers were perfectly clean. Try it. Is it good? Stella picked up a segment from a plate. Jessica, however, took a small, broken piece that had been left behind during the peeling process and popped it into her mouth. It was sweet, with a pleasant tartness, and bursting with juice. It's a good grapefruit, she said. President Grant ate a segment of grapefruit while lecturing her niece. She would never be this long-winded with an outsider. She was a woman of action, preferring to solve problems directly rather than preach. But with family, she couldn't help but nag. You cannot take it for granted that students are free labor. It reflects poorly on you. These kids are treasured by their families. If you're going to use their time, what can you offer them in return? Laura Miller knew that when her aunt was scolding her, the best strategy was to not talk back. Arguing only made it worse. Just accept the criticism. Besides, the fact that her aunt was still willing to lecture her meant she still cared. There was a time when she wouldn't have bothered. Being yelled at was a sign of progress. On the surface, she listened obediently, but in her mind, she was thinking about how badly she wanted to give him a gift. She just didn't know what. She was terrified he would refuse. It felt like if he rejected her once, he would keep rejecting her. If he needed it, she would give him the $2 million in her stock account. It wasn't like she needed the money. But she knew he would never accept something like that out of the blue. Today, she had been an idiot again, her hands moving faster than her brain. Regret flooded her. After listening to a long lecture, Laura finally used the excuse of having to get back to her son and escaped. The rainy night was cold, but her brain was steaming from the scolding, and her body felt warm. The dorm room was small, but with 4 people, it was warm enough. Leo had slept straight through the night. It was probably still a side effect of the buff. He hadn't even washed his face or changed his clothes. The chatter of his roommates hadn't woken him. He'd slept so soundly he was snoring. But it made sense. Getting up at 4 in the morning was basically an all-nighter. He'd slept like a log. When he opened his eyes again, it was morning. He felt invigorated. Finally, he was back to life. But as he got out of bed, he felt a dull ache in his arm and on the left side of his chest. It wasn't the same internal pain from yesterday's side effect. This felt like the soreness from a massage that was a little too rough. A surface-level ache. Did she pinch me yesterday? He wondered. Maybe she doesn't actually know how to give a massage and was just winging it? Thankfully, the internal pain was gone. It felt like he had shed a suit of armor, leaving him feeling much lighter. That buff was vicious. Leo decided he had to shelve it for good. Using it a few more times might actually drive him insane. It was better to just live life as a normal person instead of trying to act like someone else. It was exhausting. Money really was hard to earn. He checked his lifespan. Good. Even though his body had felt terrible, it hadn't affected his longevity. He was still on track to live to be a 61-year-old baby. It was light out, but it was still raining. The weather forecast predicted 3 straight days of it. No running today. Leo saw that Sean was also up, and they went to the washroom at the same time. At this early hour, not even the cockroaches were awake in the 4th-floor bathroom. Leo and Sean brushed their teeth and washed their faces in synchronized movements. While brushing, Leo remembered what Ms. Miller had told him yesterday. He spit out a mouthful of foam and said to Sean, "When I gave Ms. Miller the grapefruits yesterday, she said the student aid program came through. It's $150 a month, sent to your sister's account. Tell her to look out for it." Sean's hand paused for a moment. He splashed cold water on his face a few times. "Okay. Thanks, Leo." "Hey, don't thank me. Ms. Miller was the one who helped. I gave her some grapefruits, so maybe just send her a thank you text, or get her some local snacks from back home when you can. She won't accept anything expensive." "Right, I got it. Anyway, thanks." Sean didn't say more. The words, "thank you," felt too flimsy. Repeating them wouldn't add any weight. Actions were what mattered. He had another payout from TikTok ready to withdraw. Following their 60-40 principle, he transferred 60% to Leo, kept 20% for himself, and set aside the remaining 20% as a budget for equipment and other expenses. Even when things were tight, he refused to break this rule. If you weren't careful with small amounts, it would be even harder to stay fair when the money got bigger. The back end of the app kept a record of all his withdrawals. He took a screenshot of the transaction and sent it to Leo every time. Leo was surprised to see a transfer of $200 for Sean. The channel's income had been pretty good lately. All told, it was a decent amount of money, certainly better than working a part-time job. Then again, a part-time job probably wouldn't consume so much of Sean's energy. The guy was basically working 24/7. Anyone willing to put in that much effort would earn a good living no matter what they did. Penelope and Cassidy had both said the video was fine, so Leo told Sean to post it whenever he was ready. Leo felt a little guilty taking the money, but he knew that if they wanted this to be a long-term project, they had to establish the rules from the start. Being overly modest now would only lead to resentment later and doom the project. So he accepted it. Business brings people together. Friendship makes it last. It was much colder today. Leo put on a fleece-lined, cream-colored hoodie, gray sweatpants, and a blue windbreaker on top. They were all clothes his mom had sent. They fit well enough, but he felt like she bought him clothes that were a little too high school. In his mom's eyes, he was probably always going to be a high school kid. On a cold day like this, the only people willing to go out for breakfast early were couples. Single people would rather starve than leave the warmth of their beds. Leo had arranged to meet Stella for breakfast. Because of the rain, they met at the cafeteria. The student strip would be a mess of puddles and grime, and he knew Stella wouldn't like that. He also doubted the breakfast burrito guy would be out in this weather. When Leo got to the cafeteria, he saw Stella already waiting for him at a table by the window. The main cafeteria had a great view, better than some downtown restaurants. You could see the campus lake from the window seats, and the rain gave the scenery a hazy, beautiful quality. Even with an umbrella, his shoes were a little damp. He joined her, and they went to get food together. Leo loaded up his tray. After starting his exercise regimen, his appetite had at least doubled. He ate a lot, but hadn't gained any weight because he was burning it all off. His daily routine of running plus another sport, tennis or swimming, and walking moose was keeping him incredibly fit. It suddenly occurred to him how impressive it was that he could fit all that into his schedule, still have time to study, and even get to the library to read. "Are you good fishing?" "My dad likes to fish, too," Stella said casually as they ate. Hearing that, Leo almost sprayed a mouthful of soy milk all over her. I just got lucky. I'm not very good, actually. Just the thought of her father made him nervous. When you're young and in love, you never think about meeting the parents. The idea was terrifying. Don't be nervous. My dad very busy. He never has time to fish anymore. The grapefruits you gave me were really good, by the way. And they smell amazing. I put one on my nightstand, and the scent helped me fall right asleep. Everyone else had told him the grapefruits were sweet. Only Stella mentioned that they smelled good enough to sleep with. Hearing that she put one by her bed, Leo felt a slight blush creep up his neck. A sudden, unexpected wave of warmth washed over him. The rain outside didn't seem so annoying anymore. For a moment, just having breakfast with her and watching the rain felt like the most romantic thing in the world. They ate slowly, and his soy milk went cold. As Stella sipped her own cold drink, she asked, almost offhandedly, "I'm taking the IELTS in a few days. Do you want to take it with me?" It had been a few days since they'd last seen the try-hard master studying. Both Colin Edwards and Wendy Liu were starting to feel his absence. They had both, however, quietly followed the roommate chronicles on TikTok and were keeping up with his exciting life. Deep-sea fishing one day, visiting a film set the next. It was easy to understand why he hadn't been around. They were surprised to see him this morning, especially with the rain coming down in a steady drizzle. Colin had an afternoon class, but was free in the morning, so he'd come to study. Though only a junior, he was laser-focused on getting into grad school. If that didn't work out, he'd aim for a government job. His family wasn't in the same league as Alex Yang's. Alex had apparently already secured a spot in a prestigious government fellowship program, but he was so low-key about it that no one outside his dorm room knew. Some idiots would start bragging on their social media feeds the second their name appeared on a public notice, basically begging someone to report them for something. When he had initially been cramming to get into her boyfriend's grad school, now that the boyfriend was history, the grad school plan remained. A boyfriend would only slow her down. Good riddance. The only problem was that the cold, rainy weather made her feet freeze while she studied. After a while, she'd inevitably start jiggling her leg, a sure sign her concentration was shot. She couldn't believe the master was here this early, braving the rain. And he'd even brought them each 2 grapefruits. His mom, it seemed, had sent a few too many. She must have been using her office's shipping account, because she clearly wasn't worried about the cost. If it weren't so ridiculous, Leo suspected she might have sent half a truckload. After a few days away, Leo felt a strange sense of fondness seeing his 2 familiar study hall NPCs. The relationships you had at school were so much cleaner and simpler compared to the world of a film set. His brief time there felt like dipping a toe into a different world before quickly pulling it back. At school, if you worked hard, you got results. Out there, hard work wasn't enough. You had to navigate a minefield of connections, luck, timing, and background. Leo gave them the grapefruits and sat down to study. He hadn't run today, but he'd used that time for a nice, long breakfast with Stella, so his study session was starting a little earlier than usual. The system usually scheduled English for the first hour. At first, Leo had been confused. Why the hell am I learning English? I'm not going abroad. He'd heard that nowadays, even returning overseas graduates had to go through stricter reviews to take the civil service exams. He didn't quite get it, but in the process of learning English, he had rediscovered the satisfaction of effort leading to knowledge. It had helped him build a solid study routine. Plus, he had Dr. Petra Novak, Valerie Steele, in his contacts now, and could occasionally chat with her in English. It was better not to overthink it and just treat it as a practical tool. He could read foreign books, talk to foreigners. And then today, Stella had suddenly asked him to take the IELTS with her. Stella rarely, if ever, asked him for anything. When someone who gives you so much finally makes a request, your instinctive reaction is to agree. So he had, without hesitation. It was just a test. That's what students do, right? Take tests? It was part of the learning process. But now, sitting in the classroom, he opened his English book. Lately, he'd been reading original English texts. He had even checked out the same book on foreign cultures and customs that he'd seen Stella reading in the library. As he flipped through the all-English pages, it suddenly dawned on him. Stella wasn't just asking him to keep her company during an exam. She was asking him to study abroad with her. Everyone knows long-distance relationships are doomed. There was a prime example sitting right here in this classroom. Wendy Liu had just been dumped. Young people are impulsive, and young love thrives on physical touch. A short separation can make the heart grow fonder, but a long one will inevitably erode the feelings away. To be honest, it was only after his IQ stat had increased that Leo was able to grasp the deeper meaning behind Stella's request. Ugh, having a higher IQ wasn't always a good thing. It made you overthink everything. The old Leo would have just assumed she wanted him there for moral support, like asking a friend to wait outside the bathroom. Going abroad was something Leo had never considered. His family had never had such plans. His dad was a blue-collar worker to his core. Even after being laid off, he still held a deep-seated pride in the working class. His uncle was a university professor, a distinguished academic, and deeply patriotic. His aunt and uncle were civil servants, people of the state. It wasn't that studying abroad was unpatriotic, it just wasn't on their radar. Stella's family was in business. It made sense for them to feel that the domestic market had its limits. Going abroad, broadening one's horizons, developing a rational mindset, that was a logical step for her. You can't just stay in one small place your whole life, learning the art of personal politics. A truly brilliant person doesn't always need to be skilled in social graces. As long as their decisions are sound, that's all that matters. Leo understood why Stella wanted to study abroad. But understanding and accepting were two different things. He had always been across that bridge when we get to it kind of person, never wanted to worry about future problems now. But it felt like avoidance was no longer a solution. He studied for a while, then found himself staring out the window at the power lines. The rain had driven all the birds away. The wires were just wet, empty lines. Or maybe it was winter and the birds had flown south. He remembered a meme making fun of those CEO romance novels. The heroine goes abroad. The CEO finds a replacement. The heroine returns. The CEO dumps the replacement. Couldn't the CEO, apparently a person of means, just buy a plane ticket? If he could afford a substitute, surely he could afford to fly and find the real thing. Thinking about it that way, maybe going abroad wasn't such a big deal. In reality, it wasn't that far. But the breakup after graduation curse wasn't just about geographical distance. There were other factors. He zoned out for a bit. Then he opened the window a crack, letting in a gust of cold air to clear his head. He had to keep studying. The reasons he didn't want to go were simple. His friends, his family, they were all here. He wasn't an extrovert who loved socializing. And he and Sean were building something with their TikTok account. Sean was working so hard and so earnestly. For Leo to just leave would be incredibly irresponsible. And asking Sean to go abroad with him was even more unrealistic. He couldn't even afford it himself. His family didn't have that kind of money. And deep down, he had a feeling that if he really were that lovesick, that he'd drop everything to follow Stella abroad, she might not even like that version of him. He decided, finally, not to think about it for now. He would focus on what was right in front of him. He continued to study. After clearing his head, he was able to focus again, and slowly, he got lost in the material. With the time dilation buff active, he studied for a long time. When he finally stood up, his body was aching. He stretched, and at that moment, the system's mechanical voice echoed in his mind. Congratulations, host, you have passed the primary trophy husband test. You did not lose yourself on the easier path. An outstanding trophy husband is not easily swayed by temptation. An outstanding trophy husband must have dignity. You deserve the best. For passing the primary test, the host is awarded the following permanent item. Buff, innate exam aptitude. Do you get dizzy and brain dead during exams, performing far below your abilities? That's because your exam luck is poor. With the innate exam aptitude buff, your mind will be clear and your thoughts sharp during tests, allowing you to fully utilize the knowledge you possess. Prerequisite, you must actually possess knowledge. Side effect, after an intense exam, you will require 1 day of recovery time. ED for 1 day. ED for 1 day. Leo, thank God I studied English. I know exactly what ED means. The rain continued to fall outside the window. When Leo finished his study session, he found that Colin Edwards had, at some point, gone out and returned with a cup of yellow peach yogurt specifically for him. Seeing that Leo was done, he eagerly presented it. Leo stared at it. He was indeed being courted. Just the other day, he'd been thinking Colin was too calculating and that he should find a new study spot. But changing classrooms had led to that whole drama with Jessica's dad. Coming back, he realized he'd grown accustomed to this place. He suddenly understood why corrupt rulers and bosses always surrounded themselves with sycophants. When someone remembers your preferences and diligently provides you with things you like, it's hard to dislike them, even if you know they aren't purely good-hearted. It really was difficult to hold a grudge against Colin. And eating yogurt genuinely did seem to reduce his stress. He wondered if his bad mood the other day was because he hadn't had any yogurt during fall break and his routine had been disrupted. Leo accepted the yogurt. He didn't notice Wendy Lou shooting daggers from the side, a look of regret on her face. She had been hesitating, wondering if she should go buy him a drink, but Colin had beaten her to it. Fine, she thought. I'll get him something tomorrow. There's still time. He can have today. The fact that the master had given her a grapefruit meant he at least remembered she existed. Leo sipped his yogurt as he headed downstairs. He hadn't planned on going to the library. It was raining, and it was a bit of a walk. But Sean had texted, saying he wanted to get some rainy day footage, so he figured he'd make the trip. When he got downstairs, Sean was already waiting for him. Leo had to do a double take. Sean was standing in the rain wearing a wide-brimmed bamboo hat, with a giant trash bag pulled over his body like a poncho. In his hands, he cradled his camera. At this point, Leo was convinced there was no one left at this school whose opinion Sean cared about. He looked like he was collecting cans for recycling. Though, if he replaced the camera with a sword, he could pass for a wandering warrior. "Sean, what does this look?" "Filming in the rain," Sean explained. "I can't hold an umbrella. The hat was left over from a stage play cleanup. Someone was throwing it out, so I took it. I got the trash bag from the dorm supervisor. It works just like a raincoat and keeps the camera dry." Leo gave him a thumbs up. Sean grinned. It hadn't been his idea. He'd been chatting with one of the professional photographers he'd connected with, asking for tips on shooting in the rain. The guy had told him this was how they used to do it back in the day. Cheap and effective. So, Leo held the umbrella, and Sean filmed him from the side. After breakfast, Stella had a prep class, so they had gone their separate ways. Filming Leo in the rain yielded a completely different result. It was just a change in the weather, but rain always seemed to evoke other emotions. The image of Leo walking through the rain with an umbrella felt melancholic and sad. Each step seemed heavy, creating a heart-wrenching scene. Sean also noticed that the strange, magnetic aura Leo had on the film set, the one that made you unable to look away, that made the camera chase him, was gone. Back on campus, he was just Leo again. It must have been the professional lighting on set. Light was everything in photography. The footage he was capturing now had a somber, moody feel. Paired with a murder mystery soundtrack, Leo could easily pass for a vicious killer. Leo chatted with Sean as they walked. At school, Sean was his closest friend, so he couldn't help but tell him about Stella asking him to take the IELTS and his fears about her wanting to study abroad. For this part of the conversation, Sean turned off the camera. He followed alongside Leo, his rubber rain boots splashing through every puddle. Leo's sneakers, on the other hand, were slowly getting soaked. Sean figured this was why Leo had looked so sad in the footage. Something was weighing on him. Sean wasn't one for grand speeches, so he just used himself as an example. "You know, I used to be really into Megan. I did a lot for her, but she'd ignore me unless she needed something. Then, when I started making TikToks with you and had something real to focus on, I stopped chasing her. And that's when she started coming around." He paused. "I'm not saying Stella is like that. What I mean is, no matter what other people are like, we should focus on ourselves first. Figure out what we want to do. If we stand on our own 2 feet, we can get what we want. If we don't even know what we want and just blindly chase after someone, we'll end up with nothing." Leo understood what Sean was saying. Following Stella abroad wouldn't solve anything. He had to be his own person, someone impressive in his own right. Otherwise, the relationship was doomed. Without realizing it, they had arrived in front of the Vance Athenaeum. The rain had washed the letters clean, making them shine even brighter. "I get it, Sean," Leo said. "We'll just keep working hard. No one knows what the future holds. But if we try our best now, at least we won't have any regrets." Sean pumped his fist in the air, the trash bag rustling loudly. They reached the library. Even with the rain, it was packed with students. The atmosphere was thick with intense studying. Leo went inside and started looking for IELTS prep materials. Whether he was going abroad or not, he had made a promise to Stella, and he intended to keep it. He couldn't just show up to accompany her and then completely bomb the test. That would be embarrassing. Fortunately, the library was well-stocked with resources. He found a recent practice test and settled into work on it. Sean found a good spot to set up and started filming, capturing some shots of the library's environment. It was strange how a place could look so ordinary to the naked eye, but completely different through a lens. Some corners even seemed unfamiliar, imbued with a new kind of beauty. Leo found his materials and dove in, tuning Sean out. After all, his TikToks were a slice of life, not a performance. There was no point in faking it. He just had to be himself. Time ticked by. Leo didn't even notice when Sean left. A message on his phone explained that the rustling of his plastic bag raincoat was annoying people, so he'd finished up and headed back. Leo activated his time dilation buff and continued working through the test. He was making good progress. All the studying he'd been doing was paying off. Some of the question formats were tricky at first, but after doing a few, they became simple. While Leo was engrossed in his work, he didn't notice that Jessica Monroe was also in the library. She was there to find some beginner-level Chinese books for the foreign students she was tutoring. She was resourceful and dedicated to her work. Then she saw Leo, his head bent over an IELTS practice test. Is he going abroad too? She wondered. She watched him for a moment, completely absorbed in his work, but didn't go over to say hello. They were from two different worlds. It was probably for the best that they go abroad together. A happy ending for the happy couple. That's how the story should go. Jessica found the books she needed and prepared to leave. As she walked away, she couldn't resist turning back. Pretending to take a selfie, she snapped a picture from across the room. The photo captured rows of bookshelves, tables filled with studying students, and countless books. And there, just one person among many, not even in the center of the frame, was him. After finishing the practice test, Leo stared at the mountain of scratch paper on his desk. He slumped back in his chair, completely spent. He didn't even need the side effect from the innate exam aptitude buff. Studying this hard was enough to make anyone ED. Right now, a girl in a short skirt and fishnets could walk past, and he wouldn't give her a second glance. His brain was fried, and he could barely lift his hands. He had powered through several practice tests in one go, and now he had a feel for it. At least he wouldn't be going in blind. Knowing the format and having practice questions made it much easier to prepare. His enhanced intelligence made studying feel significantly less daunting than it used to. Of course, he didn't have a photographic memory or anything, but his mind felt sharper, more focused, more efficient. It was still exhausting, though. Focusing intently on one task for hours on end left him completely drained. It was like trying to build a dam in a flowing river. You painstakingly gathered the water until you reached a critical point, and then, whoosh, the whole thing collapsed. He vegetated in his chair for a while before getting up to return the materials. He was ready to head back. He was finding that changing study locations was an effective strategy. After an hour or two in one spot, even with the time dilation buff, he'd hit a wall. Moving to a new place seemed to reset his efficiency. Or maybe it was just the walk from the academic building to the library that got his blood pumping and cleared space in his brain for more knowledge. Stepping out of the warm library into the cool, damp air, he felt a bit refreshed. He could probably study some more, but maybe it was the rain. He felt a lingering exhaustion. He hadn't run this morning, yet his body felt more tired than if he had. Perhaps it was a residual side effect from yesterday. Leo opened his umbrella and started the slow walk back. His sneakers were soaked, making a squelching sound with every step, as if he had a tiny mouse trapped in his soul. The campus paths were mostly empty in the rain. As he walked, the system's voice droned in his head. Host has proactively completed preparations for the IELTS exam, striving to enter the battle prepared. By strategically underestimating the challenge while tactically respecting it, the host is awarded buff, enhanced memory, 1 day. With this buff, the host's memory efficiency will be doubled. Leo had been planning to relax. Rainy days weren't great for studying or sports. They were perfect for napping or playing video games. But now, with this reward, he felt compelled to open the IELTS vocabulary app on his phone. He might as well learn a few words. He put in his earbuds and listened to an English reading passage as he walked back. The memory buff felt just like that gust of cool air, a refreshing jolt that made his brain feel ready to learn again. He walked from the library toward the student strip. It was raining, and 2 of the animals in his dorm would need him to bring back food. Alex was eating out, but Jordan and Sean were waiting. Normally, Leo would bring takeout back so they could all eat together. He'd gotten used to the group dynamic and felt a little lonely eating by himself. But in the rain, the food would get cold. He stopped at a small diner and ordered beef with broccoli over rice, adding a fried egg and a chicken leg. After he finished eating, he had the owner pack up 2 fresh orders to go. The owner, a savvy businessman, put them in silver insulated bags to keep them warm. Great for winter takeout. While he ate, Leo texted Professor Hoffman to ask when would be a good time to drop off the grapefruits. The ones from his hometown weren't pretty, but they were authentic. He didn't really want to visit people on a rainy day, but he was worried the fruit would go bad if he left it sitting around for too long. They weren't a valuable gift, but it was a basic gesture of goodwill. He picked up the takeout and walked quickly back toward the dorm. He got a reply from Professor Hoffman telling him to come over tomorrow. The drizzle was relentless. Back in his room, he took off his shoes and found his socks were soaked through. He'd have to wear a different pair this afternoon. Sean's hometown was much colder, but he was the one who was most sensitive to the cold. He was already wearing a thick sweater, the collar stretched and misshapen. The coarse yarn gave it a look that, ironically, resembled the deliberately distressed, high-fashion sweaters you'd see in magazines. He was sitting at his computer, deep in editing mode. Jordan was on his bed, picking at his feet while playing Hearthstone. Alex's bed was neatly made. He hadn't come back yet. It felt good to be back in the dorm. Leo changed into his pajamas and crawled under the covers, warming up almost instantly. He had his art session this afternoon. For now, he'd take a nap and replenish his brain's glucose. The rain had triggered Judge Cole's old ailments. His legs ached, this hurt, that hurt, everything hurt. He was getting irritable. When he was young, he wouldn't have cared if it was hailing. He'd do what needed to be done. Now that he was older, he could be tucked away safely inside, and the rain outside would still make his whole body ache. He scowled, looking fierce. His youngest daughter, Miranda, was there to look after him, knowing her father's old problems flared up in this weather. Miranda Cole was the branch manager of a major bank. She was usually busy, but no matter how busy she was, she always made time for her father. "Dad, did you catch a cold when you went deep-sea fishing?" "Nonsense. I'm just old. These are old problems. It has nothing to do with fishing," the judge snapped. He didn't want to admit his age, but he had no choice. He looked at his children, especially this youngest daughter, and couldn't find a single thing to be pleased about. Divorced twice. A daughter from the first husband, a son from the second. Now single again. Just looking at her made his bones ache more. When you have enough kids, you get all kinds. If it had been the son-in-law's fault, he wouldn't have been so angry. He wasn't that traditional. If it doesn't work, you leave. But this was his daughter's issue. Every time he got a promotion, she got a new husband. She was old enough to know better, but she was still so reckless. And after all this time, she was still just a branch manager. The person who had posted the video of his fishing trip was Miranda's son from her second ex-husband. Father and daughter rarely had a pleasant conversation. They always ended up bickering. Just then, there was a visitor. Miranda was puzzled. Who would know her father's address and come directly to the house? The judge, tired of dealing with his daughter, was pleased to have a distraction. It was Luke Hoffman, who had said the painting was framed and he would bring it over. Even with the rain, they were in the same neighborhood. If you used the underground garage, you wouldn't even get wet. That was another perk of this complex. If you wanted privacy, you didn't have to use the main entrance. Every home had a door in its garage, allowing for discreet comings and goings. Anything to avoid talking to his daughter. Judge Cole had Luke welcomed in. Professor Hoffman hadn't expected to see a guest at the judge's house. Or rather, he was the guest. The woman must be the judge's daughter. Being neighbors, he had done a little research on Judge Cole's background. It wasn't public knowledge, but if you looked hard enough, you could find some information. He smiled and greeted her. "Director Cole, good to see you." Miranda knew her father often went fishing with this neighbor, a university professor, husband of the famous director Penelope Hayes. She couldn't remember his name. In front of outsiders, Miranda was always poised. She gave a cool, reserved nod. Professor Hoffman noticed the judge looked unwell. At his age, it was expected, especially on a rainy day. The judge rarely texted him, but he'd sent a couple of messages today, which made Luke think he might be bored with nothing to do in the rain. So, he'd offered to bring the framed painting over. The judge had immediately agreed. Otherwise, Luke would never presume to just show up at the home of a man of his stature. Miranda saw the man holding a wrapped painting. Was he here to give a gift? She pursed her lips. She thought she'd heard of this professor, the one who'd supposedly married up. He wasn't much to look at, probably very good at sucking up. Her father used to despise people like that. Had retirement made him go soft. But she was a Cole, and she maintained her composure, polite but distant. Professor Hoffman had had the painting professionally framed in a beautiful, heavy wood that probably cost a small fortune. It was old wood, with a faint, pleasant scent. It was like giving someone a few carrots you'd grown yourself, but presenting them in a solid gold box. Both the judge and Miranda were connoisseurs. Live long enough, and you learn a thing or two about everything. Miranda could tell at a glance that the frame was not cheap. These academic types really knew how to present a gift. Interesting. Judge Cole frowned slightly. Professor Hoffman carefully unwrapped the paper covering the canvas. A healthy, handsome Judge Cole stared out from the painting. His face was ruddy, his eyes deep and penetrating. Just looking at it, one felt a sense of immense power. "I just love this painting by young Leo," Professor Hoffman said. "I tried several frames, but none of them seemed worthy. In the end, I used this one I acquired a while back. I think it complements it perfectly." As Judge Cole looked at the painting, he felt his aches and pains recede. He liked it. He liked it a lot. Who wouldn't want to see a younger, healthier version of themselves? The painting depicted the man he wanted to be. Looking at it, he felt a surge of strength return to his body. Miranda hadn't expected this plain-looking, middle-aged man to present her father with a portrait. And what a portrait it was. It was good. Really good. It was like seeing her father at the peak of his power, commanding and wise. Looking at the painting, she felt like she could get divorced 2 more times. "Dad, who painted this for you? Do you think the artist would paint one for me?" Judge Cole ignored his daughter. He didn't want to scold her in front of guests. Professor Hoffman, seeing the judge was pleased, continued. Young Leo mentioned his family sent him some grapefruits from his hometown. He said he'd bring some to me tomorrow and asked if you might like any. They're not very pretty, small, and a bit rustic, but he says the flavor is very authentic. He was worried it might be too humble a gift for you. The young man is very thoughtful. The judge chuckled. Tell him to come over directly tomorrow, and I won't take his fruit for free. He can stay for dinner. Excellent. I'll bring him to visit you tomorrow, then. Professor Hoffman chatted with the judge for a few more minutes before taking his leave. As soon as he was gone, Judge Cole looked at his daughter's face and decided against it. He turned his attention back to his portrait, liking it more and more with each glance. It was a well-executed painting to begin with. He loved the power in the eyes and the overall presence. But Luke's framing had elevated it further. The frame truly complemented the art. It would look magnificent on display. Miranda wasn't fazed by her father's glare. What was there to be afraid of? He was her dad. Still, she was surprised. After he retired, he'd really changed. Back when he was the party secretary of the city, someone had tried to give him a portrait, and he'd chewed them out. Now he was commissioning one himself. Wait, an old man getting a portrait done. Could it be for his funeral? The thought sent a chill down her spine. Just then, her father glared at her again. Get out, get out. You're not thinking anything good. She didn't mind being scolded. Her father was brilliant, almost a mind reader. No one could hide their intentions from him. Hearing him yell at her with such vigor, she figured he was fine. Relieved, she retreated. Before she left, she called out, Dad, I'll come see you again tomorrow. Between his daughter's aggravation and the gift of the painting, Judge Cole's attention had been successfully diverted. He didn't feel nearly as much pain anymore. A good night's sleep left Leo feeling refreshed and clear-headed. He was learning that while the time dilation buff was great for studying and exercise, sleep was best left to the normal flow of time. He got up, got dressed, and prepared to head to the art studio. Sean decided to tag along, intrigued by Leo's painting process. He wanted to get some footage. Leo had already cleared it with Dr. Croft. She didn't mind the filming. The fine arts department had its own TikTok creators. One of them, a girl who wasn't the most technically skilled painter, had over 2 million followers. Her advantage was that she was very pretty, or rather, she was very good at painting herself to look pretty. She'd paint self-portraits in a striking, European style and either live stream or post videos of her process. Her work was average, but her videos were creative and visually appealing. TikTok was full of attractive people thirst-trapping, but an attractive person who could also paint? That was market differentiation. Some of the old guard professors had initially dismissed TikTok as a frivolous waste of time. Now, they were more addicted to their phones than the students. Even Professor Reed scrolled through it, watching documentaries and the like. Leo led Sean to the art studio. On this rainy day, the building felt particularly gloomy. If Leo hadn't brought him here, Sean would have never known a place like this was hidden on campus. The hallway was dim, but when they pushed open the door to the studio, it was brightly lit. The rain-streaked windows looked like a black and white painting. Dr. Croft was already at her canvas when they arrived. When she painted, she entered a state of intense, obsessive focus, seemingly forgetting to eat or drink. She was a natural. Leo decided to work on another portrait. He enjoyed it, and with Dr. Croft here, he could get some pointers. Since Sean had come to film, Leo suddenly had an idea. He wanted to paint Sean. The first image that came to mind was of Sean in the rain, wearing the bamboo hat and the trash bag poncho. There was a unique quality to that image. With the thought came the action. He began to paint, occasionally glancing up at Sean. Sean realized it was easier to film painting from a fixed position. Fortunately, he had more gear now. He set up one camera on a tripod for a wide shot and used his other camera for close-ups and different angles. This would give him more to work with in the edit. As Leo painted, he looked at the Sean in front of him, but his mind was flooded with memories. The Sean he'd first met freshman year. The Sean back home, riding his motorcycle in that gaudy, chicken-logoed shirt. The Sean running frantically through the hospital. The Sean waving goodbye at the train station. They were all him, full of hope for the future, full of a boy's proud joy, full of insecurity and caution, full of sorrow and desperation, full of reluctance. And the one before him now, full of earnest diligence. They say the human form is the hardest thing to paint. One person contained so many different facets. As Leo painted, these images flashed through his mind like a slideshow. And finally, they settled on the man in front of him. His hand moved nonstop. He activated the time dilation buff, and his brushstrokes became a blur. The speed wasn't exaggeration. Dr. Croft could do the same when she was in the zone, her hand moving so fast it left afterimages. Leo was completely absorbed. He didn't even notice when Dr. Croft stopped her own work and came to stand behind him. Sean was there, too, filming him from behind. Sean felt a jolt of surprise. The person he was filming was painting a picture of him filming. The feeling was surreal. He watched himself slowly emerge on the canvas. It didn't feel like he was being painted. It felt like he had been sealed within the canvas all along, and Leo was now painstakingly scraping away the layers to reveal him. Dr. Croft had been stunned by the raw power of Leo's last painting, the one with the spilled pigment. She had thought it might have been a lucky accident, and she thought he had a bit of a knack for painting women. Each of his female subjects was more captivating than the last. But now he was painting the photographer, his roommate, a student she'd barely noticed. To be honest, she couldn't even remember what he looked like. He was unassuming, maybe a bit insecure, and always hiding behind a camera. She'd seen him several times, but had no lasting impression beyond a tall kid who slouches a little. But as she watched Leo paint, she saw him capture the photographer at work. And in that moment, the photographer was focused, confident. But strangely, behind this primary figure, Leo was painting several overlapping, ghost-like images. Layer upon layer, each with the same face, but a different expression. The effect was absolutely breathtaking. It was like watching a young man stride forward through time, each step a transformation, culminating in the focused, dedicated person at the forefront. She was seeing a person's life in a single painting. Dr. Genevieve Croft found herself completely captivated. Outside, the wind and rain intensified. The sky had turned black, the boundary between the rainy day and the dark night completely erased. The trees outside the window were like a black canvas closing in. But inside the studio, the lights burned bright. Whoever invented the light bulb had probably saved half of humanity from seasonal depression. Leo painted with total immersion. Dr. Croft watched with equal intensity. Sean knew Leo was a good artist, that he had a real talent. He'd seen his casual sketches on the train, and his sister still used a drawing Leo had made as her phone's wallpaper. He was fast and good. Sean had even edited a video for his TikTok of Leo painting an apple. He didn't know how to judge a painting of an apple, but Leo's seemed really good, so lifelike you could almost smell it. Of course, he might have been biased. In his heart, Leo was a great person, a great roommate, a great brother, a friend for life. Maybe Dr. Croft was technically a better painter, but Leo's work felt more sincere. That was his subjective, unshakable opinion. This was art, after all, not calculus. That's what he used to think. He knew if he had money, he would buy Leo's art, no matter how famous Dr. Croft was. But now, as he held his camera, looking at the painting Leo was creating, he felt the blood in his veins reverse its course. It was hard to even move. Leo was painting him. When you see a portrait of yourself, the first thing you wonder is if it looks like you. If it doesn't, you might watch with detached amusement. If it's too accurate, you might recoil, thinking, I don't look that harsh, do I? Leo's painting was a perfect likeness. Not only that, it did something that made the hair on his arms stand up. Every ghostly figure behind the main one felt like him, a version of himself from a different time, all coexisting in the same space. It was as if someone had sliced open his soul and distributed the pieces into different bodies, each one showcasing a different aspect of his personality. There wasn't just one of him in the world. There were countless versions. The manic one, the rational one, the cripplingly insecure one, the proud one, the happy one, the sad one, the diligent one, the lost one. Every single one was him. He was just an ordinary person, a speck of dust on the road of life. As ordinary as could be. Not a single remarkable quality, but enough specks of dust, and you have humanity. Dust in the river of time. Leo was painting him, and he was painting every single side of him. But it also felt like Leo wasn't just painting him. He was painting everyone. Leo painted on, lost in his work. He didn't know how he was achieving this effect. He just remembered so many different versions of Sean, and he wanted to paint them all. Each one felt significant, representative. Maybe he wasn't a master painter. Maybe Dr. Croft could convey a dozen emotions in a single expression. His art couldn't do that yet. One face couldn't hold all the feelings he wanted to show. So he thought of those old flipbook animations. If you flipped the pages fast enough, the figure would move. His dad had bought him one as a kid, a little book about a dog. He had flipped through it so many times it fell apart, always trying to go faster and faster, try to erase the stutter between the pages and just see the dog run. Painting Sean, he thought of that. He knew Sean so well. They were best friends. He had childhood friends, kids he'd been close with, but they had drifted apart after going to different schools. Sean was different. They lived together, saw each other day and night. And the trip back to Sean's hometown had added so many more layers to his understanding of his friend. No wonder government officials did background checks on families. A person's family held the key to their past. When you look at someone in the context of their family, so many things that didn't make sense before suddenly click into place. Leo used to think he and Sean were the same. From average backgrounds, both pretty ordinary. After all, in a dorm with Jordan and Alex, even though they never showed off, you could still see the difference in the details. And that was in a guy's dorm, where no one paid much attention. In a girl's dorm, that kind of disparity could make things difficult. He sensed that Stella's relationship with her roommates was superficial at best. But maybe that was just Stella's personality. If he weren't dating her, he probably would never have gotten to know her either. She wasn't the type to actively socialize. On the surface, she seemed cold and unapproachable. But once you got to know her, you realized it was less about being cold and more about being a little socially awkward. Her primary way of expressing affection was to shower people with gifts. It was only after visiting Sean's hometown that Leo saw another side of him. The swaggering biker, the confident driver, the one with the wild, carefree laugh. Leo had assumed their families were on similar financial footing. But after the trip, he realized they were worlds apart. Compared to Sean, Leo might as well have been a trust fund baby. They had argued a few times in the dorm. Sometimes Leo thought Sean was too much of a simp, too weak. But if he put himself in Sean's shoes, Leo knew the most likely outcome was that he would have never even made it to college. He would have ended up like Sean's friends, fixing cars in their small town, a real-life version of the flashy outcast they used to see online. What you might see as comfortably standing still could be someone else's unattainable dream. After visiting Grassfield Hollow, his image of Sean was clearer than ever. His mind was certain. His brushstrokes were confident. It was a pure, exhilarating flow, without a single obstacle. When he finished, Leo felt like he could collapse on the floor. There was no rug. He slumped onto the sofa instead. He didn't even want to look at his painting. He didn't have the energy. It was like finishing a high-speed, life-or-death task. Only when it's over do you realize your hands won't lift, and you can't even sit up straight. Then he felt it, an urgent call from his bladder. Leo scrambled up and ran to the bathroom. Dr. Croft saw him jump up and thought he'd had another flash of inspiration, that he was going to add a final touch. But then she watched him bolt out the door and sprint down the hall to the men's room. Well, she thought the boy's got a weak bladder. Needs to take better care of himself. Sean stared at the finished painting, still in a state of shock. What do you think of this piece? Dr. Croft asked with a smile. It's great, Sean answered automatically. He was less nervous when he was holding the camera, when he felt like he was working. But with the camera down and Leo gone, it was just him and Dr. Croft, and his anxiety returned. He admires you very much, she said judiciously. The way he painted you, it's special. She sighed again. Painting really was a world of naturally gifted prodigies. His last painting of the girl had been raw, visceral, and full of artistic flair. It had stunned her. She had thought maybe the spilled paint was a lucky accident that had elevated the piece. But she was planning to show it off as her students' work in an upcoming exhibition. That painting had a speculative quality. But this one truly shook her. Painting a woman offers the advantage of feminine beauty. But how do you make a painting of an ordinary male classmate compelling? She had seen this student several times and couldn't even remember him. But looking at Leo's painting, she found herself moved. She was usually only moved by handsome men and beautiful women. This was the first time she had been touched by a painting of a regular-looking guy. This painting had life. It felt like it was growing, changing. It was a static image that somehow transcended time. If she thought the bloody girl painting was good and would sell for a high price, this painting was one she would want to buy for herself. It was a piece she would willingly spend her own money to collect. Sean looked at the painting of himself, his expression shifting from astonishment to calm, and then, slowly, to a deep sense of gratitude. Looking at the painted version of himself was like reviewing the major turning points of his life. Stumbling, struggling, but always moving forward. His eyes welled up, then hardened with resolve. He raised his camera and solemnly took a picture. In that moment, he and the man in the painting became one. The painting wasn't finished. The newest version of him stood outside the canvas. In ancient times, a scholar would die for a friend who truly understood him. In modern times, it was more like, babe, I'm dying. Leo was in the bathroom for a very long time. It might have seemed like he hadn't been painting for long, but with the time dilation buff, his kidneys had been working overtime. So, the urgent need was understandable. Every buff had a side effect, some more obvious than others. The fact that he could hold it for so long was a testament to his youth. An older person using that buff might have to run to the bathroom every 8 minutes. After finishing, Leo washed his hands and returned to the studio. He saw Sean holding his camera, taking a picture of the painting. The scene was, for some reason, magical. Leo pulled out his phone and snapped a picture of it. The photo was special, a line connecting the real Sean with the painted Sean. It was a great shot. He just washed his hands and saw the moment. So he took the picture on impulse. He'd captured the essence of it, but also an extra leg. He'd accidentally gotten Dr. Croft's leg in the frame. Well, he could just crop that out. He wasn't sure who had pressed the shutter first, him or Sean. Dr. Croft heard the noise, turned, and saw Leo. She was practically beaming with pride, so excited she almost ran over and hugged him. But then she remembered he'd just come from the bathroom. Maybe later. What do you guys think of the painting? Leo asked, snapping out of his daze. You just need to put the finishing touches on it. I'll handle the rest. I'm taking to New York, Dr. Croft announced. It's really good, Sean said, turning to Leo with a smile. For the first time, I actually think I'm kind of handsome. In that moment, he looked completely relaxed, as if the layers of shackles that had bound him were now trapped in the painting. The person standing here was the one who had escaped the canvas, free and unburdened. His very soul seemed lighter. At the same time, the system's mechanical voice chimed in Leo's head. Congratulations, host, for successfully targeting the bronze-tier single male with unlimited potential, Sean Riley. The result is highly effective. Favorability has reached 92, achieving a life-and-death friendship. If there's a bullet, he will take it for you. Please continue your efforts and climb to new heights. Leo was speechless. Sean is too easily moved. I just painted one picture, and now he's willing to take a bullet for me. Well, he thought, let's hope it never comes to that. His mind took a dark turn before he pulled it back. I'm being morbid. Painting is so satisfying, Leo sighed. Pure output, no resistance. It was like firing a gun on full auto without needing to reload. It just left your hand and shoulder aching. He felt like he needed a massage. The thought of a massage immediately brought back the image of Ms. Miller kneeling on the carpet in President Grant's apartment. Shit, his mind was wandering. He was exhausted, and his thoughts were getting weird. Leo said goodbye to Dr. Croft, leaving the painting in her care. He decided to go check on Moose. It was a rainy day, so no walk, but he could still visit. Paige had mentioned the dog walker was having family issues, and she was thinking of finding a new one, but the woman kept saying she'd be back soon. Paige was worried, but finding a replacement was a hassle. Sean, energized, went back to the dorm to start editing. Leo arrived at Paige's place and saw that it was a bit messy. He hadn't put the hairdryer back in its place yesterday, and it was still sitting on the table. The dog walker had probably just done a quick tidy-up and left. Moose was ecstatic to see him, barking happily and jumping on him. An 80-pound dog pouncing on you was no joke. Luckily, he'd recently had a bath and didn't smell. Leo pet Moose's big head. On his way over, he'd stopped by the burrito stand and bought 4 sausages for him. Once inside, he cooked up a pot of healthy dog food. While Moose ate happily, Leo sat and reviewed his IELTS vocabulary list, one hand stroking Moose's bald spot. No wonder they say dogs are man's best friend. It was so de-stressing. You couldn't just pet a normal friend's head like this, but you could with a dog. Leo took care of Moose, snapped a picture, and sent it to Paige. He also posted the photo in his second reorganized family group chat. Leo, Paige's dog, Eleanor Shun, got the grapefruits. It's getting cold, we're more clothes. Director Shun, there's a good herbal supplement pack for winter to boost your energy and circulation. I've mailed it to you. You can just make a tea with it every day. Leo was surprised to learn that his mom, Tammy, had sent grapefruits to his new godparents. She was getting good at this. He hadn't even thought of it. Then his new cousin, Shelley, sent him a private message. Shelley Shun, I bought you a few outfits. Trust my taste, they'll look good. Leo, thanks, sis. President, I will hold your leg. I will shout 666. Jiffy was happy, but he also felt like she was insulting his fashion sense. Shelley Shun. She followed the Roommate Chronicles on TikTok and would occasionally re-watch the horseback riding videos. She kept up with the new ones, too, but she felt his clothes were just too young. To high school. Seeing him dress like that, she felt like she was committing a crime just by thinking about him. Shelley had plenty of disposable income. She'd gone on a shopping spree over the weekend and mailed a bunch of clothes to Leo. She had the address for the car, so sending clothes was even easier. As for her dad, sending herbal tea. Whatever. They each sent what they wanted. Leo was surprised. He rarely spoke in the second family group chat, yet they were all thinking of him. He felt like he should probably participate more. His godfather and cousin had both waited 2 days after sending their gifts to tell him. They had probably already arrived. Leo felt like his luck was really turning around. He had to visit Professor Hoffman's house tomorrow, and the professor had said he'd take him to Judge Cole's for dinner. He'd been worried that just bringing grapefruits would look cheap, and now, just when he needed it, a solution had appeared. His godfather, Director Shun, was apparently a big deal. Alex had explained that being a personal physician to a major leader was a huge position. They'd made him a hospital director just to keep him. So the herbal supplements he was sending were undoubtedly top quality. Leo stayed with Moose for about an hour, petting him and studying, then prepared to leave. Just as he was about to go, Paige Kennedy came flying through the door. She was wearing tight jeans, a black crop top, and a black knit cardigan, with a chain-strap Chanel bag slung over her shoulder. The top was short, revealing her midriff. Leo thought it was interesting how girls could pull that off. A sliver of waist looked good on them. If a guy did it, he just looked like a creep. Paige had seen the picture of Moose and had rushed over from the Honors College campus. She felt like Leo was so busy lately that she never got to see him. When she saw the photo, she just started running. She was still out of breath when she arrived. Leo glanced once at her heaving chest, then quickly looked away. With a chest like that, running had to be exhausting. "You're here, great. I was just about to leave." "Okay," she panted. "I bought a lot of snacks. I'll split them with you." Seeing how out of breath she was, Leo took the bag of snacks from her. He had a feeling if he didn't, she might find an excuse to hit him. On the way back, he received another notification of host satisfaction. Leo Foster, all 5 feet 9 inches of him, walked to the mail center. Sure enough, there were 2 large packages waiting for him. Leo returned to the dorm, hauling 3 heavy bags. His strength had definitely increased. Otherwise, he would have had to make 2 trips. When he stepped inside, a sweet, fragrant aroma filled the air. Several large grapefruits, gifts from his aunt, sat on their desks. They tasted like normal grapefruits, sweet with a tart finish, but their scent was incredible. It was no wonder so many colognes had a citrus base. The smell really lingered. The snack from Paige were a calorie apocalypse. Chocolates, wafers, all with labels and languages he didn't recognize. Was she trying to fatten him up? Anyone who ate all this would definitely pack on the pounds. Leo distributed the haul evenly among his roommates. He unwrapped one of the wafers. It was heavy, coated in a ridiculously thick layer of chocolate, as if the stuff were free. It was delicious. 1 palm-sized piece, and he already felt full. After Leo offered them around, Sean and Jordan tore into their own. Alex wasn't back yet, so Leo left a pile on his desk. Jordan grinned. "What's this, Leo? Favors for the big day. You set a date yet?" Leo deadpanned, "Never mind. Give it back." No, I'll eat it. This is that fancy Italian brand, isn't it? Super expensive. Thanks for letting me try some, bro." Leo glanced at the logo. Bobby. A small sticker on the back confirmed it was imported from Italy. A quick search revealed that a single wafer cost 99 yuan. Insane. A single one cost nearly $15. Paige Kennedy's allowance was clearly on another level. This old bag of snacks was probably worth over $100. Had he really just devoured $15 in one bite? He noticed the chocolate was thick, but he never would have guessed it was that expensive. Sean, who had already opened his, heard the price and took a tiny, hesitant bite. He couldn't figure out what made it so special, but it was undeniably tasty. After divvying up the snacks, Leo opened the other 2 packages. The first box was just as Director Shun had promised, a collection of small packets for an herbal tonic. Each was individually wrapped in a small linen pouch, accompanied by a detailed description of the ingredients. It was meant to replenish energy and vitality, with a gentle, warming effect. The instructions warned against consuming it with cold, raw, or spicy foods, and said the linen pouch could be boiled or steeped in hot water. 1 packet a day. At the bottom was the signature, Stephen Shun. Leo recognized some of the herbs, ginseng, Panax noto ginseng, but most were unfamiliar. He took a picture of the box and sent it to their blended family group chat. "Leo, Godfather, the package arrived. Dr. Shun, this is my own formulation. You can't buy it anywhere. I've personally verified the age and source of all the ingredients to ensure they're clean. It's suitable for both young and old. Leo, thank you, Godfather." Clinging to your leg. "Jif, you're the best. Jif. Dr. Shun." A moment later, Dr. Shun, who was in the middle of a hospital meeting, scrolled through his phone's sticker library and found a suitable reply. Dr. Shun, image of Mark Twain with the caption, "A bashful smile." Leo decided to try a packet himself. The packaging was beautifully rustic. Inside a larger white linen sack were 12 smaller pouches. He only had 4 of the large sacks in total. After stowing the tonic away, he opened the second box. It was far too heavy to be the electric razor he'd been expecting. Sure enough, it was filled with clothes. Winter clothes took up so much space. On top lay a black overcoat. He was glad he hadn't used a knife to open the box. The coat was perfectly tailored, but he couldn't find a logo anywhere. The tag had been cut out. An inside seam tag, however, revealed the material, pure cashmere. It felt incredible to the touch. Below it were wool slacks and a cream-colored cashmere sweater, a complete outfit. Then came another set, jeans, a button-down shirt, and a knit cardigan. There were 3 full outfits in total, plus a down jacket. No wonder the box was so heavy. The styles were all quite mature, almost professional. Leo rarely wore overcoats, preferring puffers. He snapped a picture and sent it to his cousin, Shelley. Shelley Shun. Send me a picture next time you wear them, so I can see if I chose right. I saw this store at the mall and immediately thought of you. I bet you'll look great. She had gotten the sales associate's number, planning to order directly for him if the clothes were a good fit. Leo will do. Thanks, Shelley. I'll wear one tomorrow. Here's a hot dog. Jif. He took the opportunity to reorganize his closet, packing away his summer clothes. Just as he finished, Alex returned. He'd messaged the group chat earlier, asking if they wanted him to bring back food, and had been met with a chorus of yes. I had dinner out tonight, Alex announced, setting down several containers. This is from a hotel restaurant. They're not leftovers. I had the kitchen make a separate order. I thought these dishes were especially good, so I got an extra portion for you guys. It's on someone else's tab, so you don't owe me. Thanks, our benefactor, the other 3 chorused. Alex, basking in the praise, plopped into his chair and cockily crossed his legs. He saw the snacks on his desk, and upon learning they were from Leo, he didn't hesitate to tear one open. He was in a remarkably good mood. He usually didn't sit like that. Something could happen? Jordan asked, curious. Alex grinned. You know how it is. Northwood State doesn't usually get spots in the prestigious government fellowship program, but President Grant pulled some strings and secured a few for us. The competition was fierce, but it looks like the final list is pretty much set. Congrats, Alex, Sean said with a smile. Congrats, Mr. Secretary, Jordan added. Congratulations, Senator Young, Leo said, raising a piece of stir-fried pork in a mock toast. Alex's face was slightly flushed, and Leo guessed he'd been drinking. This was perfect, because Leo was visiting Judge Cole's house tomorrow. Professor Hoffman had framed it as just dropping by for a meal, but Leo remembered the judge enjoying his liquor on the boat, much to the concern of his medical staff. Leo had been to those kinds of family dinners with his uncle before, where people would suddenly pop up to offer toasts. As a college kid, the whole toasting culture felt awkward. Seeing that Alex was in a talkative, post-drinking mood, he decided to ask for advice. Hey, Alex, do you guys do the whole toasting thing at those dinners? Do you have to stand up and give one? It feels so awkward, but if everyone else is doing it, you look weird if you don't. Jordan didn't go to many formal dinners, but he knew his dad and brother did, and toasting was always part of it. Sean had almost no experience with that world, aside from the occasional wedding. Jordan chimed in. Yeah, it always seems like some people are just shamelessly sucking up. But if you don't do it, you look like a socially inept snob, right? Alex took over. The culture around it is a big deal, he began. As students, we can get away with playing dumb and not saying anything. But out in the real world, imagine you get a lucky break and end up at a table with some big-shot politician or CEO. You can't just hand them a gift, but you want to show your respect, make an impression. A toast is the most cost-effective way to network with a VIP. You just raise your glass, and you can say all the things you'd normally be too shy to say. Alcohol makes people more emotional, more receptive. It's the perfect way to build a connection. He took a bite of the wafer, followed by a sip of water. It's not that people love toasting. It's just that years of social evolution have proven it's the cheapest, fastest, and most direct way to get close to powerful people or friends. Normally, those guys might not give you the time of day, or you'd never even get a chance to approach them. But you stand up with a glass in your hand, and they have to at least acknowledge you. If you're articulate and sincere, you can make yourself memorable in 30 seconds. It's more effective than just asking for their contact info, though you can definitely do that right after you're done. Leo gave Alex a thumbs up. No wonder they called him Senator Young. He'd always felt so self-conscious about giving toasts, like he was putting on a clumsy performance. But if you didn't, and everyone else did, that was weird too. Alex's explanation clarified everything. The action was driven by and displayed a clear objective. It was true. You might be genuinely grateful to a powerful person who had helped you, and sending a gift might be inappropriate or insufficient. But with a drink in hand, words of thanks flowed more naturally, more sincerely, and it really could close the distance. Lesson learned. Next time, I'll have to toast you, Senator Young, and thank you for your guidance, Leo said with a laugh. Don't, Alex shot back. With your tolerance, I wouldn't survive it. Though Leo had been the one to ask, Jordan and Sean were listening intently. Sean asked, "So if I genuinely want to thank someone, I should make a toast?" "That's how it starts," Alex said, leaning back like a seasoned professor. "Then it evolves into everyone at the table feeling obligated to do it. But it's fine. I think introverts have their own advantages. People often see them as more reliable. You don't have to force yourself to change. Just be sincere. These VIPs have seen it all. Sure, an extrovert might make more friends, but they aren't always useful friends. There are pros and cons to everything." Alex finished his lecture with a paternal air, pleased that his roommates were hanging on his every word. It was fun talking with them. Chatting with sophomore girls was a little too simple. Those conversations usually boiled down to 3 words: "Send me pics." That night, a torrential downpour and a sudden drop in temperature finally thwarted the plans of lovesick couples. In the early stages of a relationship, even a hailstorm wouldn't stop a date. But perhaps because Stella had mentioned her IELTS prep that morning, they both tacitly agreed not to meet up. The texting, however, was nonstop. Leo sent her pictures of the practice tests he'd found and the vocabulary list she'd given him. Whatever happened, he'd take the test. For a student, collecting certifications was part of the game. He even considered getting a nursing assistant certificate, maybe an accounting one if needed. Would a resume plastered with certificates look like he was just doing things for the social media post? Maybe. Some people did things just for the Instagram story. Others enjoyed the experience, grew from it, and then posted. The rain was relentless. Leo told Stella not to come out. He stayed in his room, memorizing IELTS vocabulary and texting her between study sessions. People in love could text forever. He'd decide to stop after one more message, then get sucked back in. Read a page, pick up the phone, send another text. Jessica was back in her dorm for the night. The heavy rain had slowed down her part-time work. Although she'd finally paid off her credit card and wasn't trapped in a cycle of spiraling debt, she still took whatever jobs came her way. Her father was still healthy enough to yell at her over the phone. He'd broken his leg, and the girlfriend who was supposed to be taking care of him had vanished after a few days, claiming a family emergency. She called him daily with sweet reassurances, but never showed up, and her father, unbelievably, fell for it. Jessica reflected on her own approach. With strangers, she could be polite, even manipulative. But with her own father, she was too honest. And her honesty just made him act out more. It was like he was forcing people to lie to him, to coddle him, just to feel satisfied. It was exhausting. Still, she loved rainy days. A rainy day meant a break. When she worked at the hotel, rain meant fewer guests and a chance to rest. It was a relief. The girls' dorm was already chilly, so they had a small space heater running. With the door closed, their room was warm and cozy. Though not exceptionally close, the roommates kept the place clean. Jessica changed into an old t-shirt and thin sweatpants, braless. It wasn't an issue. Guys weren't allowed in their building, and the university was strict about it. Her long hair was down, giving her a kind of effortless beauty. Her features weren't conventionally beautiful by traditional standards, but she had what photographers called a high-fashion face, striking and versatile. Stella was a natural beauty who didn't need any shaping. Jessica watched Stella lying on her bed, giggling at her phone, and knew she was texting Leo. Her own phone was on, displaying the picture she'd taken at the library that morning. She'd recently picked up a new gig, writing sponsored content for an Instagram account. She learned early on that being well-dressed and put together opened doors. She had her own account, of course, but it wasn't for showing off. She had nothing to show off. The persona she crafted, the things she posted, were all for selling ads. Her account only had around 8,000 followers, but even that brought in an income. A few hundred words of ad copy could earn her anywhere from $50 to $100, sometimes more. It was mentally draining, though. Coming up with captions was exhausting. No one knew the account was hers. With makeup and editing, she was unrecognizable, and she rarely posted a full-frontal photo anyway. Her target audience was very specific. She projected the image of a well-off, stylish young woman, an aesthetic that appealed to young girls, a demographic with strong purchasing power. Recently, a story she wrote about having a secret crush caught the eye of a perfume company. They sent her a sample and commissioned a short series, about 10,000 words, posted in daily installments. They'd pay over $1,500 for the whole thing, with a 60% advance for each post. 800 words for $100. At that moment, she felt despicable. Everything about her could be sold. Even the feeling of liking someone could be written down in exchange for money. Stella was happily watching a show on her bed, occasionally tapping out a text, her feet kicking playfully in the air. Meanwhile, Jessica was on Instagram, pretending to be Stella, texting her crush. Staring at the photo from the library, she wrote with vivid emotion. Her love couldn't be spoken aloud, so she wrote it down, adding at the end, "This story is a work of fiction." The next morning, it was still raining too hard to go for a run, and the temperature had plummeted. The clothes from Shelley had arrived, just in time. Since he might be going to Judge Cole's house today, he chose the wool slacks paired with the cashmere sweater and the black overcoat, finished with a pair of sneakers. Clothes really did make the man. Jordan had bought a full-length mirror for the dorm, and when Leo looked at his reflection, he was genuinely surprised. He looked good, handsome even. Maybe it was because he'd actually gotten taller, but a great coat was like a cosmetic procedure for a guy. It gave him an air of sophistication. He finally understood why Alex loved wearing overcoats in the winter. Leo had tried them on in department stores back home, but always felt they made him look short and sloppy. A puffer jacket was always a better choice. He'd been choosing the wrong coats. This one was light and soft, but still held its shape. If he were holding a potted plant, he could probably star in a slightly less short version of The Professional. When you receive a first gift that's incredibly expensive, you almost give up trying to keep score. It was like being millions in debt. What was another 100,000? The coat felt exceptionally well made, fitting him perfectly. He searched the collar for a tag and found one. Theory. A quick search told him it was a brand known for its suits. Their sweaters started at over $300, coats around $600. This pure cashmere one was probably over $1,000. Shelley's salary wasn't even that high, was it? In the past, receiving something like this would have filled him with anxiety. Now, Leo was relatively calm. Not entitled, just calm. A life had been saved. A car was probably a fair trade. After all, some people saved lives and never even got a thank you. The rescued party would just disappear, pretending it never happened. He wondered what he could do to offer a comparable return. That was the only way to build a lasting relationship. But there was no rush. If you want a long-term connection, you didn't return a gift immediately. That would turn it into a transaction, with everything having a price tag. Because of the rain, Professor Hoffman sent Walt to pick him up. When Walt saw Leo in the overcoat, he thought to himself that Leo was usually so low-key, probably just dressing down to fit in with his peers. Today, heading to Judge Cole's, he was finally dressing normally. His gift, however, was as understated as ever. 2 bags of grapefruits and 2 linen sacks of something. It seemed Leo's gifts were always some kind of local specialty. A rich kid's hobby? Choosing the niche over the expensive. Walt helped him with his things and opened the car door. As Leo sat down, he worried about wrinkling the coat. It was generally a bad idea to wear new clothes for an important event. You never knew how they behave. But he didn't have many nice clothes to choose from. Inside, the car was already a pleasant 73 degrees. He slipped off the coat. The cashmere sweater underneath was the perfect weight. He had a bit of a drive ahead, so he closed his eyes, put on his headphones, and started reviewing his notes, trying to make the most of his one-day memory buff before it expired. Seeing Leo lean back and rest so comfortably, Walt drove on in silence. The rain poured down for the entire drive, but as they pulled up to Professor Hoffman's neighborhood, it suddenly stopped, as if the sky were about to clear. In the rain-washed yard, the grass was a vibrant green, the flowers brilliant. When Leo arrived at Professor Hoffman's house, the professor was standing by the fence at the edge of his yard, gazing out at the river while doing a series of chest expansions. It looked like an old-school calisthenics routine, the kind no one did anymore, but their generation still remembered. Professor Hoffman was doing this in nothing but a set of thermal long johns. Hearing the noise, he turned and broke into a wide smile. "Leo, morning. Perfect timing. Come have some breakfast with me." Leo figured Professor Hoffman truly didn't see him as an outsider anymore. The professor's long johns were covered in horizontal stripes. It was a very prison-chic look, or maybe cat burglar. "Morning, Professor. I had a feeling the weather would clear up when you arrived, and sure enough, the rain's gone. It's so fresh out here, the air smells amazing. The lake's a bit murky, though. Probably not great for fishing today. Professor, it's still pretty cold. You might catch a chill dressed like that. Shouldn't we go inside? It is a bit chilly, but seeing the sun makes you feel warm, doesn't it? Humans are no different from moths, really. We're all drawn to the light." Professor Hoffman was easily persuaded and followed Leo into the living room. People with yards love their yards. Even though the living room was luxurious, Leo felt the professor spent most of his time in his unpermitted addition, the glass sunroom. It was already 9, not early by any means, but Professor Hoffman looked like he'd just woken up and hadn't eaten. What a life. A man in his 40s or 50s should be in his prime, hustling. Meanwhile, Director Hayes was probably out on set before dawn. Well, it was normal for one person in a marriage to be the go-getter. "I had the housekeeper make some creamy polenta and I had her fry up those crispy bits from the breakfast burrito truck. They're amazing sprinkled on top. Leo washed his hands and sat down. He'd already eaten, but he was young. Another meal wouldn't hurt. And Professor Hoffman's breakfast spread was light and refreshing, beautifully arranged. "This celery is from the garden," the professor said. "It's delicious." Leo tried a bite. It was surprisingly good, with a faint, fresh aroma. Even for someone who didn't like celery, it was tasty. On the table were also thin slices of beef shank, pickled radishes, and pan-fried dumplings. There's also a mixed salad with mushrooms, cucumbers, and wood ear fungus in a sweet and sour dressing. The beef was fragrant. Leo copied the professor, sprinkling the crispy fried shallots over his polenta, stirring them in, then dipping a slice of beef into the warm bowl before eating it. The flavor was incredible. It had to be beef from some free-range ranch out west. There was no gamey taste. The shank was full of tendon, but sliced thinly against the grain and softened by the warm polenta. The texture was perfect. Professor Hoffman truly knew how to live. Even a simple breakfast was a gourmet experience. The creamy polenta with the crunchy shallots was a perfect combination of textures, sprinkled with a bit of pepper and green onions. Also from the garden, it was heavenly. Professor Hoffman ate with gusto, slurping down 2 bowls while chatting away. Together, they finished off the celery, the salad, the beef, and the homemade dumplings. Leo had 2 bowls of polenta as well, and they polished off the entire pot between them. A full stomach brought a sense of peace. Maybe it was the rain stopping and the sun coming out, but everything felt right. After they finished, Leo went to wash his hands, using one of the disposable mouthwash cups on the counter. Professor Hoffman went to change, re-emerging in a shirt-like jacket. "Your godmother had this custom-made for me," he announced, showing it off. "She knows I like wearing button-downs. It's got a down lining inside. Super warm." He wore over a base layer with slacks and simple cloth shoes. His outfit was another unbranded ensemble that, on him, managed to look like it cost maybe $50. The professor somehow made expensive clothes look cheap. But he was so effortlessly charming and witty that it didn't matter. His strengths weren't his looks or his fitness. His leisurely lifestyle didn't exactly scream health nut. Yet he radiated confidence and ease. After eating and chatting for a bit, Professor Hoffman messaged Judge Cole to see if it was a good time to come over. They were scheduled for lunch. At the judge's age, it was best to eat the main meal midday and keep the evening light. It was nearly 10 by the time Leo was done, so they headed over together. Walt was already there, ready to help carry the grapefruits. Professor Hoffman didn't say anything about the fruit. They were just a pretext for the visit, after all. But he was curious when he saw the other bag. You couldn't just give medicine as a gift. Leo had brought 2 bags, one for the professor and one for Judge Cole. "My godfather sent them to me." He pulled the prescription note from the bag and showed it to his professor. Dr. Shun had included 4 notes, one for each sack. Professor Hoffman studied the note carefully. He saw the signature, Stephen Shun, and paused. "That name sounds familiar. You know that Dr. Shun's soothing root, herbal tea we drink sometimes?" Leo said. "My godfather formulated it." Professor Hoffman was floored. This kid, he had a box of that stuff in his desk drawer. He never thought it did much, but he'd instinctively brew a cup for a headache or when he felt stressed, like drinking a soda. In the front seat, Walt's jaw dropped. So this was the world of the rich. His godfather was a pharmaceutical tycoon. Everyone in the country had probably tried that tea. Even if each person only contributed $1, that was over $1 billion, right? So the local specialty gifts were just a front. The real gift was this exclusive tonic. "I drank a packet last night," Leo said. "I think I slept really well, all the way until morning. Didn't feel cold either, but that might just be because I'm young." "What's a young man like you drinking medicine for? What a waste." "My godfather only sent 4 sacks. He said he makes it himself and oversees the ingredient selection, so there isn't much. I thought since I was coming here, I'd bring one for you and one for Judge Cole. I'll keep one for myself and give the last one to Professor Reed." Professor Hoffman realized he was getting a pretty good deal out of this. When you get older, you can never have too much medicine. "Next time your godfather has something good, save a little for your professor," he said with a laugh. Leo nodded in agreement. Since the rain had stopped, they didn't have to use the underground garage. They strolled through the neighborhood instead. Leo had always been driven directly to Professor Hoffman's house, so this was his first time walking around. The community was lush with flowers and trees of varying heights, creating natural screens. There was hardly anyone around. Residents of this villa community probably kept to their own yards. The landscaping had to have been done by a professional. The arrangement of plants and the winding paths felt sophisticated, creating a sense of spaciousness and tranquility while also offering surprising turns and hidden vistas. Mossy pines and rock gardens concealed the houses from view. They arrived before a stone wall from which an eave extended, draped with green vines. The house number read 11. The main iron gate was closed, but when they rang the bell, a smaller pedestrian gate to the side was opened for them. The gate was so thick and heavy that swinging it open felt like entering a bank vault. Leo stepped inside, a thrill of excitement running through him. He'd never been to the home of such a high-ranking official. He remembered a scenic spot back home, at the foot of a mountain, where a high-tech iron gate stood locked. A friend had told him that a retired VIP lived there. The gate was so tall you couldn't see anything inside. He'd been curious, but had never heard of anyone actually going in. Today, he was walking through a similar gate himself. The world inside was, at least, still on planet Earth. Just past the gate was a screen wall made of single, massive stone with a naturally painting-like pattern. Walking around, it opened up to a vast, flat, and impeccably maintained courtyard. Unlike Professor Hoffman's yard, which hummed with life, this one felt grand and formal, like the entrance to an auditorium. They crossed the courtyard and entered an outer hall, which was just as formal. It looked like a conference room. Had the decorator taken cues from the Capitol building? They passed through the hall, down a corridor, and finally entered another room. There was Judge Cole. This room felt like a proper living room. The sofa was softer, bird cages hung from the ceiling with chirping inhabitants, and the walls were adorned with a variety of art and a photo gallery. The portrait Leo had painted was there, prominently displayed. He looked very pleased with it. Framed and mounted, it looked so professional that Leo barely recognized his own work. A staff member led them in. Judge Cole was leaning back on the sofa. Leo was startled by his appearance. On the fishing boat, the judge had been full of vigor. Now, in the blink of an eye, he seemed to have aged 10 years. At his age, you couldn't afford many blinks. At home, Judge Cole's hair was sparse, his face weary, his energy low. But when he saw Leo and the professor, a smile touched his lips, and his spirits seemed to lift slightly. "Good morning, Grandpa Cole," Leo said, greeting him first. Professor Hoffman, having been here the day before, was a little more at ease. Yesterday, coming up from the garage, he'd felt like he was navigating a maze. The security was top-notch. He had dropped off the painting and left quickly. Coming with Leo today felt more relaxed. Still, there were protocols to follow. The grapefruits were fine, but the herbal tea had to be inspected. "Leo brought you some herbal tea for vitality," Professor Hoffman explained to the judge. "We should have your personal physician take a look just to make sure it doesn't conflict with anything you're currently taking." Judge Cole was intrigued. It was unusual to receive medicine as a gift. Supplements, maybe. Leo was just a student and might not know any better, but for a man as savvy as Hoffman to allow it meant the stuff was probably special. The physician, Dr. Maxwell, was on standby in the next room. Due to the change in weather, the judge's health had been poor the last couple of days, so he couldn't be left alone. When asked to inspect the herbal tea, he frowned. Most of the commercial wellness teas on the market were scams, a random mix of goji berries, red dates, and longan, with a dash of ginseng to justify a high price. Whether they actually did anything was debatable. Everyone's constitution was different. Some people needed strengthening, others had too much internal heat. What worked for one could be harmful to another. Furthermore, most herbs these days were commercially farmed. Farming itself wasn't the problem, but the use of fertilizers and pesticides to increase yield could render the herbs useless, if not downright toxic. It was a slow poisoning. Any real doctor knew you had to at least check a pulse before prescribing anything. This random gift of medicine business was nonsense, and to bring it before Judge Cole was utterly reckless. However, they were the judge's guests, and he hadn't said a word, so Dr. Maxwell held his tongue. He began his examination, opening the linen sack, carefully inspecting, smelling, and touching the herbs, laying them out as if solving a puzzle. His brow was furrowed for a long time before he finally spoke. "The quality of these herbs seems excellent, and the aroma is correct. Is there a formula description?" Professor Hoffman handed him the note with a triumphant smirk. He'd been waiting for that. Dr. Maxwell read the formula, nodding as he went, muttering the approximate dosages to himself. He confirmed that there were 12 packets in the sack. "Brilliant," he said, his tone changed. "This is perfect. The formula is balanced and moderate. Aside from young children, any adult can take this." He carefully sniffed the herbs again, pinching a few between his fingers with a look of intense concentration. He felt a pang of regret for his initial judgmentalism. He wanted to ask the young man if there was any more of this tea, but it was a gift for the judge. It was probably a rare item. He glanced down at the signature at the bottom of the note. Stephen Shun. Dr. Maxwell's eyes widened. Was this prepared by Stephen Shun? He knew the name. Years ago, a high-ranking official in another state had tried to recruit Dr. Shun, but the local government there had used extraordinary measures to keep him, even making him a hospital director. The man's medical skills were legendary. VIPs who visited his state and fell ill would be back on their feet after 3 doses of his medicine, with virtually no side effects. Dr. Maxwell was a respected physician in his own right, but he knew he was no match for Dr. Shun. Yes, Leo answered politely. My godfather prepared it. Is it all right for Grandpa Cole to drink? If so, I'll leave it. If not, I'll take it back. Sorry for the trouble. Leo was starting to worry that bringing medicine had been impulsive. The intense scrutiny felt like something out of a palace drama. Yes, he can drink it, Dr. Maxwell said immediately. Turning to the judge, he added, this tea is perfectly suited for your recent symptoms. A course is 12 packets. I expect you'll see significant improvement after 2 courses. This is Dr. Shun's formulation. His soothing root tea is also quite effective for things like congestion and inflammation. Judge Cole also knew of Stephen Shun. The circle of top-tier physicians in the country was small, and the elite were very particular about their health, especially in retirement. It was amusing to see his normally stern Dr. Maxwell so full of praise for someone else. The doctor carefully gathered the herbs he had inspected, not wasting a single bit. Sir, I'll go prepare the tea for you. Judge Cole smiled and told him to go ahead. Young Leo was full of surprises, just like the sunshine he seemed to have brought with him today. Observing all this, Leo noticed how well Judge Cole treated his staff. He recalled what Alex had said. The best way to judge a person's character is to see how they treat the people who work for them. If they're abusive, they're unstable and not to be trusted. If they treat them like servants, they're arrogant. A person's true nature is revealed in their attitude toward those with less power. Judge Cole was kind and respectful to his staff. That, in itself, was a rare and admirable quality. Position changes one's aura. Nourishment changes one's body. In essence, a person is shaped by their status and circumstances. As Leo walked with Professor Hoffman through the subtly majestic neighborhood, passing through the heavy iron gate, the expansive courtyard, the grand hall, and the long corridor before finally reaching the living quarters, the experience felt profound. When something is within easy reach, you take it for granted. But when you have to strive for it, and could lose it at any moment, you cherish it. It was like visiting someone's home. The first time he'd gone to Professor Hoffman's, he'd been nervous, but after a few visits, the director's house just felt like a house. The initial awe faded. But Judge Cole's home was different. Each gate, each courtyard, each hall was a threshold. They were empty spaces, but walking through them steadily amplified the feeling of nervous anticipation. If you were there to ask for a favor, you'd have second-guessed yourself 1,000 times before even reaching the man himself. Fortunately, Leo wasn't there to ask for anything. Judge Cole was old, and the changing weather took a toll on his body. He felt a constant, heavy ache, as if he were carrying a millstone on his back. Today, with the rain gone and the sun out, it felt as if someone had finally lifted that weight. He felt noticeably better, and when you feel better, your mood improves. Seeing the young man dressed so sharply also pleased him. A young person should look vibrant. When you're in your 70s, no amount of dressing up can restore that vitality. Old people love their grandchildren because they love seeing the energy of youth. But Judge Cole didn't particularly enjoy seeing his own descendants. He had always been a stern figure, and his relationship with his children was distant. High status often thinned the bonds of kinship. In a large family, even showing a little favor to one grandchild could stir up trouble and endless speculation. It was easier to just avoid them all. But he did like children, the kind who could walk and use the toilet on their own. Having a university student like Leo visit someone with no ulterior motives was a refreshing change. It was comfortable. Judge Cole invited them to sit, and a staff member served tea in delicate blue and white porcelain cups. Leo had been nervous, his throat a little dry, and he was grateful for the drink. He lifted the lid, and a wave of fragrance washed over him, as if he were standing in a tea garden in the spring, smelling the freshly plucked buds. He took a sip. It tasted like a clear sky after a storm. Not hot, but cleansing. It was as if his lungs had been rinsed clean. The warmth spread through his stomach. Seeing the boy's look of pure, enraptured enjoyment, Judge Cole couldn't help but tease him. Well, how does this tea compare to yours? Leo paused. Does he want me to lay it on thick? It's delicious, he said with a polite smile. Since Leo wasn't going to elaborate, Professor Hoffman stepped in, hazarding guesses about whether it was a rare spring harvest from some famous mountain. Not at all, Judge Cole chuckled. It's actually a wild tea from an unknown forest. Turned out surprisingly good when we dried it. It has no name, but it's also free of pollution. A gift from one of the younger generation. Professor Hoffman thought to himself that any tea the judge liked would become famous soon enough. But he understood. This tea was like the tonic Leo had brought. An exclusive, internal gift, not for public sale. It had no price. A pound of unknown wild tea could be worth $20 or $20,000, depending on who was drinking it. The conversation flowed easily, with Professor Hoffman keeping it light. They inevitably circled back to Leo's godfather, a relationship that still intrigued the professor. It happened when I went to my roommate Sean's hometown, Leo explained. I saved his cousin Shelley when she fell off her horse. Afterward, Sean and I took his mother to the hospital in the state capital, and we met Shelley's family. Her father is Dr. Shun. After we got Sean's mom settled, we all had dinner together. I guess my godparents took a liking to me. They video called my mother right then and there. They hit it off, and they decided to adopt me as their godson. Professor Hoffman remembered Leo mentioning saving someone and taking a roommate's mother to the hospital, but he hadn't realized the story had such a sequel. It was a heartwarming tale, a satisfying case of a good deed being rewarded, unlike those awful stories where a rescuer gets sued. Judge Cole was also surprised by the story. He hadn't known that the person Leo had saved during the fall break was Stephen Shun's daughter. The field of traditional Chinese medicine was in decline, and the number of truly great doctors who specialized in geriatric care could be counted on two hands. The country's elite were very invested in their longevity, and they all knew of Dr. Shun. The boy had good luck. Stephen Shun was a man who didn't need money. He had his own pharmaceutical company, excellent medical skills, and a loyal disposition. He had only one daughter. It was remarkable that he had now taken Leo as a godson. The world was very small indeed. Under normal circumstances, Judge Cole would never have met a regular university student. Yet here they were, connected not only through Professor Hoffman, but now also through Stephen Shun. My godfather also gave me a car, Leo added honestly. I know how to drive, but I don't have my license yet. I'm studying for the test now. The car was a huge gift, but he had accepted it, so there was no point in hiding it. Neither Professor Hoffman nor Judge Cole batted an eye. To a man like Stephen Shun, whose only daughter's life had been saved, giving away half his fortune would probably seem reasonable. A car was like a toy. Besides, he hadn't just given a car. He'd formalized a relationship. This was meant to be a long-term connection. The bonds between people were truly strange and wonderful. Leo felt that his life was an open book. In conversations with these powerful men, he learned nothing about their lives, while his own was being thoroughly examined. A higher IQ didn't help much when you were outmatched in life experience and eloquence. All his increased intellect did was remind him to keep his mouth shut as much as possible. As the conversation wound down, they took a walk with the judge in his flat, paved courtyard, likely designed to accommodate a wheelchair. The sun was pleasant, but the wind had picked up. The rainstorm had officially ushered in winter. Leo supported Judge Cole as they made a slow loop around the yard before heading back inside for lunch. The meal was surprisingly homey, much like what you'd find in a fine restaurant. Pot roast, sautéed greens, pan-fried tofu, beef and potato stew, steamed fish, tomato and egg soup, and white rice. Leo had expected some exotic delicacy, but here was a dish as humble as tomato and egg soup. Before eating, the judge took a handful of pills with water. Leo started with the soup and was instantly stunned. It was as revelatory as the wild tea he'd just had. He'd never thought he'd compare tomato soup to rare tea. The soup captured the pure, sweet-sour essence of a sun-ripened tomato, the kind you'd eat straight from the vine as a child. The egg was silky and smooth. If it hadn't looked like tomato soup, he would have guessed it was some exotic seafood dish. He was experiencing a wave of pure happiness from a simple soup, and it made him want to eat 3 bowls of rice. His eyes lit up. Seeing his expression, Judge Cole was delighted. The simple, honest reactions of a young person were a joy to witness. My chef here, he said, he spent 20 years just chopping vegetables at the state guest house. He's a meticulous man, very serious about his cooking. The pot roast was heavenly. The fat was rendered translucent like jelly. Even someone who hated fatty meat would be tempted. It wasn't greasy at all. A single piece, pressed flat over the rice with a bit of sauce, was enough for half a bowl. The lean meat was perfectly tender, not tough or dry at all. The pork belly was perfectly layered, the skin clean and soft. The simple sautéed greens were also incredible, crisp and sweet. If all vegetables tasted this good, kids would never be picky eaters. The steamed fish was fresh and firm, dressed in a perfectly balanced soy sauce. The potatoes in the stew were fluffy and starchy, like chestnuts, and the beef was tender and rich. Good ingredients plus a good chef equaled an amazing meal. Leo genuinely ate 3 bowls of rice, packed solid. He had thought his Sichuan-style poached fish was a masterpiece, but the meal at Judge Cole's house was on another level. His own dish had probably only stood out because of its heavy, spicy flavor, something the judge's doctor normally forbade. That, plus the system's buffs, had merely brought him up to the judge's everyday standard of dining. Inspired by Leo's hearty appetite, Judge Cole finished his own bowl of rice. Professor Hoffman, who was quietly trying to diet, had only taken half a bowl but ate just as much of everything else. They polished off almost every dish. After the meal, they had a cup of the herbal tea Leo had brought. It was slightly bitter, but not unpleasant, with a strange aftertaste like sugarcane juice. After lunch, Judge Cole would often cough a few times due to acid reflux, a common stomach issue often mistaken for a sore throat. But today, after drinking the warm tea, his throat felt calm, and he forgot to cough entirely. After tea, it was time for the judge's afternoon nap. Leo knew it was their cue to leave and looked to Professor Hoffman, who was already on his feet. They said their goodbyes. As they were leaving, they missed Miranda Cole, the judge's daughter, who had said she was stopping by. She arrived after her father had woken up from his nap. As a bank manager, she was capable and respected at work, though she could be a bit goofy around family. She found her father in good spirits, looking much more energetic than the day before. "Dad, you look great today." Judge Cole just gave his daughter a sidelong glance and slowly sipped his tea. Leo and Professor Hoffman parted ways, and Leo headed back to campus in Walt's car. He had planned out who to give the remaining tonic packs to, but after hearing the judge's doctor say a 2-course treatment was best, he decided to ask his godfather if there was any more. It felt rude to ask over text, so he decided to call. He first messaged to ask if Dr. Shin was busy. "Dr. Shin, I'm free." In reality, he had just finished a patient consultation, but he would always make time for his new godson. Leo dialed the number. "Good afternoon, Godfather," he said, his voice calm and steady. He'd learned that speaking clearly and slowly, without being timid, was the best way to be heard. "Good afternoon. It's rare for you to call. What's on your mind?" Dr. Shin's tone was direct, almost like an interrogation. Having been around powerful men like Judge Cole, Leo had developed a thicker skin. "Godfather, the herbal tea you sent me. I gave a pack to an elder I know. His doctor, who says he's a former colleague of yours, recognized it and said it's best to take 2 packs for a full course. I'd already given the others away. I was wondering if you had any more you could send? If not, I can just reallocate what I have." This was it. Dr. Shin had been expecting something serious. He prepared a batch of this tonic every winter. The most tedious part was supervising the sourcing of the ingredients. He drank it himself and gave some away as gifts. His own daughter, however, didn't appreciate it and would hand it out casually to her colleagues. He couldn't bring himself to scold her, but he was pleased that Leo was asking for more. It meant the boy felt comfortable with him, and it was good to know it was going to someone who appreciated it. "Of course, I have some more here. I'll send it to you. And don't worry about your parents. I've already mailed them a batch. It's good for staying warm in the winter." "Okay, thank you, Godfather. Please take care of yourself." Leo hung up, feeling good. Sometimes, all you had to do was ask clearly. Dr. Shin thought nothing more of it until that afternoon, when he received a call from a fellow physician. The man called him Senior Brother Shun, but he couldn't place the name. The caller explained they'd met at a conference once. "Senior Brother Shun, I apologize for the intrusion, but the official I work for is currently drinking your herbal tea and finds it excellent. He was hoping to acquire another course." Dr. Shin paused. It clicked. This must be the elder Leo had mentioned. Was his new godson that well-connected? By the end of the day, he had received several more calls from doctors who served various high-level officials, all asking for the same tea. That evening, someone even contacted him about mass-producing the formula as a commercial drug, offering to buy the rights or give him a stake in the company. Dr. Shin had thought his first successful drug was a once-in-a-lifetime stroke of luck. He never imagined it would happen again, so late in his life. He was already so rich he had to pretend to be poor so his daughter wouldn't be spoiled. What was he going to do with even more money? He couldn't spend it all. It was impossible. The sky was clear. The city's skyscrapers stood out sharply against the blue, and the trees were a riot of green, red, and yellow. A carpet of golden ginkgo leaves covered the ground in places. In the car, Walt saw that Leo wasn't resting his eyes after his phone call. Seizing the opportunity, he struck up a conversation. The driving school has logged enough hours for you and your friends. We've had the training car running day and night, rotating through your fingerprints. What would be a good time to schedule your written test? Any time is fine. Just avoid the 19th, Leo said. All right, I'll let you know once it's booked. As long as you study the handbook a few times, you should pass easily. Okay, thanks, Walt. Don't mention it. Walt drove smoothly. Seeing Leo was still awake, he continued. Back home, it's already freezing. We've got a foot of snow on the ground. Leo had never seen that much snow. What do you even wear? Long johns, wool pants, another pair of wool pants, and then insulated snow pants. They chatted the whole way back to campus. The drive felt short. By the time they arrived, Leo knew that Walt had an older sister who ran a convenience store in the next town over, that his father had passed away, and that his mother lived with his grandmother. He learned that Walt's favorite food was corn grits, that he missed his mom, and that he regretted not studying harder in school, but was grateful for his time in the army. As they pulled up, Leo felt Walt might have mistaken him for someone important, sharing his life story so openly. Leo waved goodbye as Walt pulled away, watching the car until it disappeared from view. In the driver's seat, Walt caught sight of the boy still standing there, waving in his rearview mirror. He'd gotten a little misty-eyed talking about his family, but he'd blinked it back. He wasn't sure why he'd open up like that. Maybe it was just the comfortable atmosphere in the car. Leo had a way of making you feel heard. Leo turned and headed back to his dorm. He was starting to understand the dynamics of status. In front of Judge Cole and Professor Hoffman, he answered every question honestly. In front of him, Walt did the same. He didn't return empty-handed. Judge Cole, seeing how much he'd enjoyed the tomato soup, had sent him home with a box of tomatoes and a small canister of the wild tea. As a thank you for the portrait, the judge had also given him a piece of his own calligraphy, a framed quote that could stand on a desk. Heaven helps those who help themselves. Professor Hoffman had told him the judge's calligraphy was incredibly rare and valuable. As Leo walked, the system's notifications started chiming in his head. He had gamified his day, breaking down his social obligations into tasks. It was like an office veteran logging client communication, 30 minutes for a long bathroom break. He'd set accompanying a leader for a meal and actively listening to others as tasks, and the system had approved them. Host has engaged in positive social interaction, learning dining etiquette and appreciating fine tea and food with composure and humility. Host created space for others to shine, resulting in a comfortable atmosphere. Reward, buff, enhanced palate, 2 days. Host has listened attentively, allowing another to express their emotions and achieving a moment of genuine connection. Reward, buff, elephant's hearing, 2 days. Human hearing is limited. Elephants can hear low-frequency sounds over long distances. With this buff, you can hear conversations about yourself from far away. Well, that's a new one, Leo thought. Like my name is Voldemort or something. Too bad it only lasted for 2 days. As he walked toward the dorm, he heard a distant voice cry out, "Son of a bitch, I got banned. Which one of you assholes reported me?" Leo chuckled. Back in the dorm, he felt the tension melt away. The coat came off, and he collapsed on his bed. Sean and Jordan were in their usual spots, like statues. Jordan playing a game on his laptop, Sean laser-focused on editing a video. Alex's bed was neatly made. He wasn't back yet. After a moment, Leo got up, washed the tomatoes, and tossed one each to Sean and Jordan. He bit into one himself. It was perfect, sweet, tart, and juicy. "Did you get this from a farmer?" Sean asked after devouring his. "Tastes just like the ones we grow back home." "I don't usually like tomatoes," Jordan added, "but this one is actually good. The skin is almost sweet." There weren't many in the box. Leo set one aside for Alex, which left only 4. He decided to take the rest, along with a pack of the herbal tea, over to Professor Reed. He also needed to return the tea set he'd borrowed from Dr. Sterling for the film shoot. He knew Professor Reed's schedule. She would be up from her afternoon nap, drinking tea. He went straight to her apartment. Sure enough, she was there with Dr. Croft. "Perfect timing," she said when she saw him. "My old friend Dr. Sterling was asking if you're free tomorrow. He wants you to join him for a tea culture event. There should be compensation. If you get certified as a tea master, you could get paid like a guest lecturer, a few $100s per event. Are you interested?" "Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Professor. I'd love to go. I actually brought back the tea set he lent me." "Don't worry about that. He's a shrewd one. He put a photo of you with the tea set from the film shoot up in his factory showroom. Orders have been pouring in. He owes you a thank you." Leo sat down to prepare the tea. He was surprised by how relaxed he felt. After visiting Judge Cole's house, being here felt comfortable, not nerve-wracking at all. Dr. Croft was still half asleep, having pulled another all-nighter. As he worked, the sunlight streamed through the window, casting a moving silhouette on the wall, a living painting. Dr. Croft was still in a daze, her eyes unfocused. She wasn't looking at Leo, but at the play of light and shadow he created as he moved. The silhouette was just black, white, and gray, but it was incredibly vivid. It was a piece of art in itself. She slowly came to and took a sip of the tea. It was sweet. "Evelyn," she said, her eyes finally focusing, "this tastes different from when you make it. Have you been hiding the good stuff from me when Leo's not around?" Professor Reed sighed. "You drink tea like you're chugging water, then you say it's not as good as a bottle of Snapple. Any tea is wasted on you." Dr. Croft just grinned sheepishly. The tea Leo was preparing was the award-winning oolong from Hsinchu, Taiwan, that Professor Reed had given him. Its strength was its incredible, pure sweetness. Its weakness was that it was good for exactly 3 infusions. By the 4th, it turned bitter. While the water heated, Leo checked his phone. People in relationships check their phones 10 times more often than single people. They were in the constant updates phase of their relationship. Stella sent him photos of everything. Her textbook, her shampoo, the game she was playing, the clouds outside her window. He did the same, though he hadn't been able to take pictures at Judge Cole's. He did, however, send her a photo of the calligraphy the judge had given him. "Stella, wow, this old man really likes you. He even gave you his calligraphy." "Leo, it was more of an exchange. I painted a portrait for him, so he gave me this, and a tiny canister of tea. Like for servings, max. We can drink it together next time." "Stella, okay." Smiley face. A smile spread across Leo's face. The Stella on his phone was so much more expressive and cute than the one he saw in person, who was always a little more reserved. "Hey, Romeo, stop texting. The water's boiling," Dr. Croft said, tapping the table with 2 fingers. Leo flushed and quickly put his phone away. He let the boiled water cool for a moment before slowly, carefully pouring it. The technique was crucial. You had to pour the water down the side of the pot, not directly onto the leaves, allowing the heat to gently envelop them. The leaves unfurled like dancing girls, releasing their sweet essence. His movements were slow but deliberate, the pour and decanting timed perfectly. A second too long, and the tea would be ruined. His tea ceremony skill was his highest-leveled proficiency, and he had spent time learning the theory behind it. Professor Reed drank the tea, completely satisfied. Dr. Croft was finally jolted fully awake by the aroma. "Oh no," she groaned. "I used to think Snapple was the best. Now, what am I going to do when I can't have this?" "Leo, you should come to New York with me. Apply for grad school. You can switch your major. It's not too late." Leo decided it was best not to engage. Artists were on another plane of existence. "Professor," he said, changing the subject and handing Professor Reed the bag of herbal tonic. "This is for my godfather. He sources the ingredients himself. If you're not taking any other medications, you can drink it daily. It's just for general wellness." Professor Reed was already reading the formula note. She knew enough about health to recognize a good blend. The name Stephen Shun was all the assurance she needed. After they finished the tea, Leo made his exit. He had arranged to meet Stella for tennis. He called Professor Reed on a whim and invited her along. Dr. Croft declined. She was heading off to paint, but Professor Reed, who had been cooped up by the rain, readily agreed. She was also, she admitted, curious to meet the girl Leo was always bragging about. Leo texted Stella the update. She was a little nervous about meeting his calculus professor. For some reason, it felt like meeting his parents. She had planned to wear a 2-piece tennis outfit, a crop top and skirt, but hesitated and instead chose a more conservative, 1-piece white tennis dress with long sleeves. She had great legs, toned and athletic, and the dress looked fantastic on her. She pulled her hair back into a tight, neat ponytail, slicking it down so not a single strand was out of place. Her face had the kind of structure that would look good even if she were bald. Satisfied with her clean, parent-approved look, she grabbed her racket and headed out. The indoor tennis court was unheated. Stella arrived to find Leo and Professor Reed already there. Professor Reed was dressed in a matching lavender sweatsuit, looking sharp even at 69. She was meticulously going through a stretching routine. Leo met Stella at the door. "Professor Reed, it's a pleasure to meet you," Stella said, her voice clear and her gaze steady. "I'm Stella Vance from the English department. I haven't had the privilege of taking your class, but Leo speaks of you with such respect." Leo beamed beside her. Professor Reed was pleasantly surprised. The girl was poised and articulate, with an air of genuine warmth. She was beautiful, the kind of bright, open-faced young woman that older people adored. "Hello, Stella. Leo is always showing off about his wonderful girlfriend. It's lovely to finally meet you." The professor returned to her stretches, and Leo led Stella on a warm-up lap around the large court. "So, are you any good at tennis?" he asked as they ran. When he'd met her at the door, she'd been bundled in a long, coat-like puffer jacket. But when she took it off, he saw the tennis dress. It was modest, but on her, with her height and incredible proportions, it was stunning. And her hair, pulled back so severely, gave her a surprisingly alluring, intellectual look. If Professor Reed wasn't there, he would have bitten her cheek. "I used to play," Stella said, a faint blush on her cheeks as she caught him staring. "I'm okay. I'll play with Professor Reed first. Then we can have a match. If you're rusty, don't worry, I can teach you." "Okay," she smiled. Leo thought he was a pretty good tennis player. With his posture correction skill and increased stamina, he felt practically unbeatable. He and Stella finished their run, and he took the court with Professor Reed. She had a good athletic sense for a woman her age, and Leo was a good partner, keeping the volleys going at a comfortable pace. She was having a great time. After about 15 minutes, he suggested a break and switch partners, letting the professor rest. It was Stella's turn to serve. In front of the professor, her nerves kicked in, but unlike other people, when Stella got nervous, she got better. Thwack! The tennis ball shot across the net, a screaming yellow blur that landed just inside the line on his left. He hadn't even had time to swing. "Whoops, my mistake," he said, assuming it was a fluke. He'd been distracted by her legs. This time he focused. Thwack! He managed to get his racket on the second serve, but the force of it was staggering. The ball rocketed off his strings and flew out of bounds. The third serve, he returned, but it didn't even make it over the net. Leo was having an existential crisis. His stamina was innate. He had a strength buff. He should have been a monster on the court. And yet, he couldn't even return Stella's serve. The "okay" she had mentioned was in fact professional level. Her serves were lethal, fast, sharp, and perfectly placed. Her returns were effortless. No matter the angle, she got to the ball and sent it back with punishing difficulty. Leo abandoned his casual hitting mindset and started playing for real, pouring all his energy into just keeping the ball in play. Professor Reed, meanwhile, was happily collecting the stray balls with a long-handled scoop, getting in her steps. Leo was panting, fully engaged. Stella, on the other hand, was a picture of calm focus. Her parents had always encouraged her to be active. She had a natural talent for sports and had taken tennis lessons for years, cycling through 3 different coaches until the last one said she was good enough for competitive tournaments. At that point, the magic had worn off. The sport was just a sport. She moved on to something else. After a grueling set, they switched again. Playing with Professor Reed now felt like a vacation. She was a beginner, and the pace was slow and easy. He quickly adjusted his mindset. There was no shame in being outmatched by someone with natural talent and years of training. He was here to have fun and get some exercise. With his ego in check, he patiently volleyed with the professor, feeding her easy shots. As they played, the mechanical voice echoed in his head. "Congratulations, host, for your effective progress with gold-tier single woman Evelyn Reed. Goodwill has reached 78. Please continue your efforts. Congratulations, host, for your highly effective progress with the limitless potential of platinum-tier single woman Stella Vance. Goodwill has reached 85. Please continue your efforts." Leo had no idea why both their goodwill levels had suddenly jumped. The yellow ball flew back and forth. Thwack! 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 He left the court feeling both thoroughly beaten and strangely confident. He still didn't understand the mysterious fluctuations of the goodwill meter, but he had achieved his main goal. He'd gotten a great workout. On the way out, Professor Reed and Stella chatted amiably. He noticed Stella was being a bit more formal, more proper than usual. When they parted ways at the faculty housing building, she was the picture of decorum. After watching Professor Reed disappear inside, Leo and Stella started walking back. He saw Mr. Roberts, the security guard, and gave him a wave. Mr. Roberts saw the pretty girl by Leo's side and smiled knowingly. As they walked, Stella let out a long, dramatic sigh of relief. Professor Reed seemed strict at first, Leo said, amused, but she's really easygoing once you talk to her. You don't have to be so stressed. Stella shot him a look. It wasn't about the professor being strict. She'd never been afraid of teachers. The pressure came from the fact that she was Leo's teacher. As if a parent had finally left the room, she playfully punched his arm a few times. They joked and bickered the rest of the way to the women's dorms. He noticed the bright security floodlights weren't on, but the afternoon sun was even brighter. Under the shade of a large tree near the entrance, Leo acted. In a flash, he pulled her into a hug and bit her cheek. She pushed him away, landing a few more soft punches. "Are you a dog? Why'd you bite my face? It's all sweaty and gross." "I don't mind. He grinned, then dodged another playful fist and darted away. He finally understood those couples who could make out in public, hidden behind a single tree trunk, oblivious to the world. When you were in love, you were granted a special power to ignore all passersby, except parents, teachers, and exes. He walked back to his dorm, giddy. Stella had invited him to Clearwater Cove for the weekend. The tea event with Dr. Sterling was also this weekend. He could pretend the event was 2 days long and use it as a cover to stay the night at the Cove with her. The thought sent a thrill through him. Back in his room, he changed out of his sweaty clothes. He'd shower later. The dorm showers were drafty in the winter. Then, he headed for the art studio to find Dr. Croft. As long as she was around, he wanted to learn as much as he could. He had snapped a few pictures of Stella during their match. He arrived at the studio to find Dr. Croft painting something bizarre and incomprehensible, a tangled mess of snake-like shapes. After staring for a while, he couldn't help but ask, "Professor, what is that?" "Oh, when did you get here? You scared me." Leo rolled his eyes. "I literally just handed you a tube of paint. If it wasn't me, was it a ghost?" "It's you," she said. "Can't you tell?" He looked at the canvas again. This mess of ropes or snakes was supposed to be him. This was a level of modern art he just couldn't comprehend. Dr. Croft paid him no mind and continued painting. Leo set up his own easel. He chose a photo of Stella playing tennis and began to sketch. The image in his mind flowed through his fingers, onto the brush, and onto the canvas. Perhaps influenced by Dr. Croft's strange style, his painting of Stella came out unusually fierce. She didn't look like she was playing tennis. She looked like a sniper, her eyes sharp and focused. When Dr. Croft took a break and came over to see his work, she was taken aback. "Wow, this girl has a powerful presence. Like she could take on an army by herself." Leo looked at it and agreed it was a bit too aggressive. It was fine. He rarely painted the same person more than once, but with Stella, every portrait seemed to capture a different side of her personality. Still, Dr. Croft said, "It's a very special piece, full of emotion." Leo glanced back at her painting. From a distance, the chaotic lines surprisingly resolved into his likeness. It was strangely dynamic, even handsome. "Professor, what kind of abstract technique is this? Why paint like that?" She stepped back to admire her work. "This," she said seriously, "is that I'm getting paid for this technique. It looks complicated, but it's simple. I just reversed the order. I drew your outline first with a special pencil whose lines disappear after a while. Before they vanish, I just scribble all over it." The client said her zodiac sign was a snake, so. Snakes. It's like a coloring book for adults. Leo was speechless. "All these flashy tricks are useless," she continued, turning back to her canvas. "What really matters is being able to paint an ordinary picture well." She kept painting. She'd come here for a break, but had ended up with a commission to paint Leo for a wealthy patron. She couldn't just paint another straightforward portrait, so she created this convoluted, show-off version. It would keep the patron happy. By the time they finished, it was already dark outside. Alex had messaged the group, saying he was treating them to dinner. Leo planned to head back to the dorm, throw on a jacket, and meet up with his roommates. The rain had washed the campus clean, and the paths were bustling with students under the bright evening lights. Leo got back to the dorm. Alex wasn't there yet, but he'd sent a message to their group chat. "Alex Young, someone's treating me to dinner tonight. You guys should come crash. It's a pretty upscale place, so dress nice. Jordan Davis. Roger that, bro. Sean Riley. Copy that, Godfather. Leo Foster. Understood, Mr. Secretary." Leo had a sneaking suspicion that Alex's upscale place was the same private kitchen Stella had taken him to. He felt a pang of guilt. He'd been so wrapped up in his relationship that he'd been neglecting his roommates. It was just like Alex to think of his friends, even when he was the one getting a free meal. Heeding Alex's advice, they all tried to look presentable. Jordan wore a casual blazer covered in a dizzying pattern of Kenzo logos, transforming him from a regular big guy into a walking optical illusion. Stare at him for too long, and you'd get vertigo. Leo considered wearing his overcoat, but figured he couldn't outdo Alex in that department. Besides, Sean would probably be in a jacket. Leo wasn't even sure Sean owned an overcoat. He settled on gray sweatpants, a matching gray hoodie, and a short, black puffer jacket his cousin had bought him. It was practical, even if the rumors were true that this year's jackets didn't contain any real down. Sean was used to it. For years of college, and his wardrobe hadn't changed much. He used to be self-conscious about it, but ever since he'd started his TikTok channel and dived into photography and editing, his confidence had soared. Master those skills, and you could go anywhere. He didn't have to worry about what to wear. He only had 2 jackets. He just brushed it clean and made sure there wasn't any dandruff on the shoulders. The address Alex sent was, sure enough, for the private kitchen near the Honors College. Winter was clearly Alex's season. He stood waiting for them in a sharp maroon overcoat, shirt, vest, and tailored trousers, looking like the villain from a soap opera who was about to do something dastardly. Parked at the curb was the familiar G-Wagon, a vehicle so ridiculously out of reach for a college student it felt like a dream. Alex was chatting with another guy next to the SUV, waiting for them. He had that formal, official air about him. "This is my friend, Carter Hayes. He owns the place," Alex said, making introductions. "And these are my roommates, Jordan, Leo, and Sean." Carter Hayes hadn't expected to see this pretty boy again, let alone have to buy him dinner. Standing face to face, he noted how short the kid was. Dressed so casually in a hoodie and sweats, he looked like a freshman. Rosy lips, fair skin, the whole package. "Hey, call me Carter," he said, shaking their hands. "Any roommate of Alex's is a roommate of mine. I've got my top chef in the kitchen tonight, just for you guys. I'll make sure you're taken care of." The small talk continued as they walked inside, the whole experience feeling awkwardly adult for a bunch of college students. Carter greeted each of them, making a point not to single out Leo. Leo played along, acting as if it were their first meeting. They hadn't talked much before anyway. Carter obviously knew Stella, but it didn't seem like they were close, and she'd never mentioned him in detail. Based on Alex's introduction, "My friend, Carter," it sounded like a casual acquaintance. If they were real buddies, it would have been backpats and calling each other man. Sean asked if he could film, and Carter readily agreed. It was free marketing for Instagram and social media. "That roommate channel you guys run is huge," Carter complimented. "Tons of followers. If you post about my restaurant, I'm the one getting the better end of the deal." Sean, not one for schmoozing, simply nodded and started filming. The restaurant was stunningly beautiful. He'd never been anywhere like it. It had a classic, antique charm with lush greenery that gave it a primal feel. Walking inside, Sean realized that the old houses back home could look this beautiful with the right touch. With a camera in his hand, his nervousness faded, and he focused on capturing the ambience, occasionally pointing the lens at Leo. Jordan was the most outgoing, striking up a conversation with Carter from the moment they met. By the time they reached their private room, they were practically slinging arms over each other's shoulders. "Carter, man, this is seriously impressive," Jordan said. "So young and already running your own business. You're the one living the dream, just having fun." "I'm just messing around," Carter said modestly. He was tall and handsome, dressed in a white turtleneck, a black coat, and a diamond-encrusted watch that gleamed on his wrist. His black leather shoes were polished to a high shine. Their private room on the second floor had several bottles of liquor and wine already set out on the table. Carter offered to open one, but Alex politely declined. "We're good with a Little Harbor IPA each." Carter didn't linger. After showing them in, he left to see about the food. Once he was gone, the four of them finally relaxed. The room wasn't large, but it had a beautiful bay window that extended outward, like a classic alcove for looking out over a courtyard. Leo noticed it offered a perfect vantage point for spying on the main hall below. The food arrived quickly, each dish exquisitely plated. This place was pricey. Online reviews put it at around $50 per person, but with the appetites of four college guys, the bill could easily hit $125 a head. It wasn't the first time Alex had treated them, so they were all relatively calm. The spread was lavish, the beer ice cold. "So what did you do for this guy, Alex?" Jordan asked curiously. "Why do you want to buy you dinner?" "Nothing major. Just a favor. Connected him with someone." "A small thing," Alex explained. "He wanted to send me a gift, but I figured there's no such thing as a free lunch. A good meal with friends is better. No strings attached." With that, they didn't hold back. They ate and drank, knowing that everything has a price. You either pay it up front, or you pay it later. The private kitchen steak was served medium rare, nearly an inch thick and pre-sliced. It looked a little bloody, but one bite revealed a juicy, tender, and rich flavor. Though it appeared lean, the fat content was perfect, the outside seared to a slight crisp while the inside remained soft. The portion was about the size of a girl's palm, cut into several pieces. It was their top-rated dish, with different cuts priced at $35, $55, and $1.95. Judging by the thickness, they were eating the $95 version. Then there was the black truffle roasted duck, cut into perfect bite-sized squares. The menu had a modern, Western fusion feel. Leo felt like he could have easily eaten another steak. The four of them ate casually, their conversation light. Nothing too serious. Alex only drank half his beer. It wasn't until they were walking back to campus, full and content, that the mood truly loosened and they started joking around. Leo had noticed that Alex was much more reserved at the restaurant, not as relaxed as he was in the dorm. Carter seemed a little too interested in you, Leo, Alex said on the walk back. He was trying to subtly ask me about you. I don't know him, Leo said, but Stella brought me here once. He knows her. Figured as much, Alex said. He was asking about your family. I just played dumb and changed the subject. Leo chuckled. Carter had run into a brick wall trying to get information out of Alex. When Alex didn't want to talk, he could deflect with official-sounding nonsense for an hour without repeating himself until you fell asleep. Thanks, Alex, Leo said with a smile. I've got a short trip this week, but when I get back, dinner's on me. Sounds good. You're going to that tea expo, right? If you see any good stuff, let me know. I'll pay you for it, Alex offered. Leo nodded, then asked, a little curious, your dad's the deputy mayor? Does he still have to buy his own tea? Of course, Alex said. Above the deputy mayor is the mayor. Above the mayor is the governor. And it goes on and on. My dad's new position means he has to be more careful than ever. The things you can buy with your own money are the cheapest things you'll ever own. The free stuff? That's too expensive. We can't afford that price. With half a beer in him and surrounded by his closest friends, Alex couldn't help but let a little of his world slip out. Listening to him, Leo realized his dad must be a hard-working, impressive guy. Sean, I'll scope things out tomorrow, Leo said. If it's okay to film, you should come join me. Dr. Sterling had invited him, but he had no idea what to expect. I'm free. Just let me know. Don't forget about your free assistant, Jordan chimed in. If it's fun, I'm in. I can drive. Alex laughed. And if there are any cute girls, you can call me. Leo teased. What about that actress who was sending you pictures? Alex sighed dramatically. Nope, can't talk to her anymore. After she sent me a picture of herself in stockings, she sent me a screenshot of my dad's official bio from the city website. Scared the hell out of me. Had to block her. Leo, Jordan, and Sean all looked at each other. Unreal. A single beer can make a college student feel like he can take on the world. For college students can't do much of anything. By the time they walked back to the dorm, the light buzz had already worn off. It was perfect timing for bed. Leo had a trip the next day, so he planned to get to sleep early. He'd already said goodnight to Stella, worried he might fall asleep unexpectedly. It had happened once before. He'd woken up in the middle of the night, sent a belated goodnight, and gone back to sleep. After texting her, he felt like his day was complete, but he still did one last scroll through his social media feeds. He saw that Paige Kennedy had gone skiing and had even brought Moose with her. The dog looked frozen but deliriously happy, bounding through the snow. That explained why she'd told him he didn't need to worry about Moose today. Paige was decked out in a full snowsuit. White suit, pink hat, pink goggles, pink boots. Leo seriously suspected she'd gone just for the photo op. There were no videos of her actually skiing, just a series of carefully posed shots. There was, however, a great picture of Moose running so fast he almost wiped out. Leo liked the post for Moose. Must be nice to be rich, he thought. It had just gotten cold, and they'd already found snow. Then he saw a post from Miss Miller. She was at a conference somewhere, wearing a blue attendee badge. She looked lovely in a white dress paired with a beige and brown tweed jacket, a blend of gentle and professional. She was holding a navy blue laptop bag, posing in front of a convention hall entrance. Her hair was tied back with a few delicate strands framing her face. She looked great. Leo liked her post, too. He hadn't realized how much he'd missed during the day. At night, everyone was active online. He even scrolled past a post from the hardest-working person he knew, Jessica Monroe. No selfie, just a picture of a sign for a translation service with the caption, "Big translation job tomorrow. Wish me luck. Let's do this." He almost liked it, but his thumb stopped just in time. He just said goodnight to Stella. Liking her roommate's post right after felt a little too eager. He didn't want Stella to see it and get the wrong idea. Enough scrolling. Time for sleep. Even though he had to leave early, he had still made plans for a morning run with Stella. Starting the day with honey water and a run made everything feel healthy and orderly. On days he missed either one, something fell off. Humans really were creatures of habit. He slept soundly. When he woke up, it was the usual routine. Wash up, drink his honey water, change into his workout clothes, and head out. He gave Sean a quiet wave on his way out the door. The dorm was silent. The cold weather made it easier to sleep in, and it seemed like the whole building was still asleep. It was quieter than usual, and the sun was rising later now. The sky was still a hazy gray as he left. He did a few stretches downstairs before heading out. As he approached the basketball court where Professor Reed usually worked out, he saw her familiar figure. Dr. Croft wasn't with her today. Her schedule was probably too erratic. Professor Reed was stretching. Leo stopped to say hello. "Morning, Professor. How are you feeling after our game yesterday?" "I'm fine," she said, her voice full of energy. "I made sure to stretch properly. My left arm is a little sore since I don't use it for backhands often, but it's nothing serious." A good stretch today should sort it out. She was meticulous about her health, exercising every day without fail. Even on rainy days, she'd work out indoors, though she preferred being outside in the fresh air. Dr. Sterling mentioned you were coming to his event today. I thought you might skip your run, she said, still stretching. I figure I had enough time. I prefer to stick with my routine. I'm so used to it that if I miss a day, I feel like I've forgotten something important. After saying goodbye, Leo continued his run. He didn't hear the system announce a favorability increase, but he could see it in Professor Reed's eyes. It was probably just a small bump, a cumulative +0, one here and there that would eventually add up to a full point. A math professor would be that precise. He reached the fountain by the flower beds and saw Stella already waiting for him. The weather must have been getting to her. She was wearing a fleece-lined hoodie. On anyone else, it might have looked bulky, but with her long legs clad in black compression tights, she just looked cozy, not oversized. The pale blue fleece made her look warm and soft, like a fluffy sheep you wanted to pet but couldn't quite reach. Leo walked right up and pulled her into a hug. She felt as soft and huggable as he'd imagined. She had on a light blue baseball cap, worn backward, with a small tuft of hair stubbornly sticking up at the front. Her face was fair and beautiful. When you know a girl, when you love a girl, you start to see how adorable every little thing about her is. She's cute this way. She's cute that way. It's like getting a new favorite toy that you can't stop admiring. The morning hug was warm and innocent. They've been taking things slow lately, not even really kissing much. They ran to the pavilion at the foot of the cemetery by the lake. It wasn't raining, and there wasn't another soul in sight. The pavilion stood silently on the hillside. It would be a crime not to go up. A morning climb to take in the view felt just right. Almost an unspoken agreement, they started up the path. The bench inside the pavilion was clean, likely wiped down by someone's backside the previous evening, but it was still a bit damp and cold from the morning dew. Standing in the pavilion, they leaned against the railing and looked out. The lake was still, half shrouded in a thick fog that seemed to hide some mythical beast. The path around the lake was quiet. They stood there, holding hands. No kissing, no hugging. Just standing, hands clasped, and it felt like a current was flowing between them, passing from one body to the other. Leo had thought that after sleeping in the same bed, that feeling might fade, but he was wrong. Just standing here, holding hands, he could still feel that electric tingle. They treasured the moment, standing there like fools as the fog drifted up and dampened their clothes. It was a silent, mutual understanding they seemed to share ever since Stella had decided to study for the IELTS. They headed back down. Since Leo had to leave, they wouldn't have time for breakfast together. He just grabbed some bread and milk back at the dorm. He had plenty of food there. Back in his room, Leo grabbed a change of clothes and the small tin of wild tea that Judge Cole had given him. Alex was awake, but still in bed, scrolling on his phone. Jordan wasn't up yet, his soft snores filling the room. Leo called a taxi. The address Dr. Sterling had given him was for a hotel in a rather remote area. But the complex itself was a sprawling collection of traditional-style buildings. The Royal Garden Hotel. The taxi driver asked if he was going for a conference, explaining that it was a popular venue for them. The layout was a bit confusing. The main lobby wasn't at the entrance. The car had to wind through the grounds before finally finding the right building. The architecture was magnificent, very traditional, making Leo feel like he'd walked into a scenic historical park. He wondered if he was in the right place. Then he saw the large banner hanging by the entrance, wishing the International Advanced Tea Ceremony Seminar a resounding success. Inside, to the right of the lobby, was a registration desk. Next to it stood a sign detailing the event. International Advanced Tea Ceremony Seminar, hosted by the American Tea Association and the Tea Ceremony Adjudication Committee, in collaboration with the Yamada Tea Society of Japan, the Tang Dynasty Tea Culture Research Institute of Japan, and Greenwood Tea Plantations. This had to be it. Several people were seated at the desk, with greeters in traditional gowns standing by. Leo walked up and said he was there for the event. When they asked for his name, he announced, a little uncertainly but clearly, Leo Foster. The staff members started searching through a list, flipping through several pages of names. He wasn't on it. For a moment, Leo worried it was a mix-up, that Dr. Sterling had forgotten to tell them he was coming. He hated the thought of having to bother him with something so trivial. "Oh, I'm so sorry," the young woman said, picking up a separate, single sheet of gold-colored paper. "You must be our special guest, Mr. Foster. You look so young. I thought you were a student. My apologies." She stood up and bowed her head repeatedly. Leo overheard two other staff members at the desk speaking Japanese. This event was more high-end than he'd expected. The staffer handed him a blue badge with a gold border that read special guest, with corresponding translations in Japanese and English. She also gave him a gift box of tea. Another staff member then approached him. "Mr. Foster, this way, please. We'll get you checked in, and you can put your luggage in your room." Leo was assigned a large room. He had asked the front desk for a quiet, south-facing one, and they had given him a corner room at the end of the hall. The beautiful window was nearly floor-to-ceiling, not a single pane of glass, but an elegant, traditional design with intricate latticework. It had to be a modern renovation. An authentic antique window couldn't have been this large. The traditional architecture had a natural appeal that was simply pleasing to the eye. Leo pulled out his phone and used the compass app. The large window faced due south. Soft sunlight streamed in, casting the pattern of the latticework onto the plush carpet. The room was more spacious than a standard hotel room, with plenty of space for a sofa and a desk opposite the bed. He learned to make such requests from his experience as Professor Reed's assistant at her conference. When an event books a large block of rooms, the hotel is usually happy to accommodate reasonable requests. It was a useful tip for personal travel, too. During the off-season, you could often get a better room just by asking. He dropped his things and immediately contacted Dr. Sterling, who gave him an address. Come straight to the Dynasty Hall in the Phoenix Pavilion. Leo went downstairs and, after wandering around the complex for a bit, finally found it. All the buildings in the hotel looked alike, with elegant, tiered roofs and upturned eaves carved like dragon heads. They were especially beautiful at sunrise or sunset, when the angle of the light made it look as if the dragons were biting down on a fiery red ball. When Leo arrived, he saw the sage-like figure of Dr. Sterling. That was the only way to describe him. He was dressed in flowing, layered robes that would have looked like a mess of fabric on anyone else. But Dr. Sterling, despite his age, had good features and carried it off with an air of ethereal grace. The Dynasty Hall was already crowded, set up like a typical conference. Every seat had a name card, the kind that made it impossible to skip a session without being noticed. Dr. Sterling was standing by the entrance, smoking a cigarette. The image was slightly comical, a distinguished figure in elaborate robes, holding a cigarette in the cold wind. If an ash were to fall, it would surely burn a hole right through his outfit. "Morning, Dr. Sterling." Leo must have walked right past him earlier while he was searching for the hall. Seeing Leo, Dr. Sterling extinguished his cigarette, stubbing it out in the sand-filled ashtray next to him, which was already bristling with cigarette butts. The hotel was non-smoking, so this was the designated spot. "Ah, Leo, you're here. Good, you're early," he said, his mood seeming a bit off. The last time Leo saw him with Professor Reed, he had been verbose and full of energy, a complete chatterbox. "I'm going to need your help for the next couple of days. You'll be my assistant for now. First, I'll have someone take you to get changed." Leo followed a staff member, hoping he wouldn't have to wear one of those sage-like robes. They looked a bit like a dress and felt strange. Fortunately, that wasn't the case. The staffer handed him a set of clothes: navy blue linen pants, a white tunic, and a navy blue vest. The fabric was soft, and the buttons and stitching were high quality. A small, embroidered logo on the hem read Sushio. Leo went to change. The outfit fit perfectly. The costume he wore for the film felt like a stiff, heavy gown, but these clothes were soft and comfortable. He'd seen Professor Hoffman and Judge Cole wear similar things at home. He wondered if it would make him look old. He stepped out and looked at his reflection. The staff member, waiting outside, complimented him. "Mr. Foster, you look very handsome in that." Leo wasn't sure if it was just a salesperson's automatic praise, but he looked again. The mirror showed a young man in a traditional-style outfit. Surprisingly, he didn't look like a servant or an extra from a historical drama. The tunic and vest were tailored so well that even though they were made of cotton, they held their shape. The man in the mirror was a refined, handsome scholar. It looked good. He snapped a picture to send to Stella later. He started chatting with the staff member, his pleasant voice calm and measured. "Dr. Sterling seems to be in a bit of a mood. Is there a problem with the event?" "It's nothing major," the staffer explained. "It's just that the Japanese delegation is always a bit extra. Their tea ceremony is incredibly complex. Washing hands, burning incense, kneeling to brew, kneeling to drink. They're always kneeling." Dr. Sterling advocates for simplicity and practicality, but they start going on about tea culture and how their traditions are more authentic. It's supposed to be a cultural exchange, but it always turns into a bit of showdown. "I heard they brought one of their top team masters this time, ready to put on a big show." Leo listened to the gossip, intrigued. He hadn't realized these kinds of cultural clashes actually happened. So how do they decide who's better? Is it a performance? Ultimately, it comes down to the tea itself, how it tastes. but their elaborate process might earn them extra points. They even insisted on a new judging panel this time. Leo understood immediately. The last sentence was the most important part. The old panel was full of Dr. Sterling's people. He was the head judge. Now, some of that power had been given away. "Thank you, Mr. Collins," Leo said, glancing at the staffer's blue name badge, which read Kyle Collins. "You know a lot about this." Dressed and informed, Leo went to find Dr. Sterling, who was now on the stage at the front of the hall, delivering the opening remarks. He sat at a long table with another man. Name cards were in front of them. Dr. Sterling's read, Arthur Sterling. The man next to him was Yamada Motoi. To Leo's surprise, the hardest-working person he knew, Jessica Monroe, was also on stage. She was dressed in a similar traditional outfit, white pants with blue trim and a navy blue top, her long hair flowing over her shoulders. After Dr. Sterling finished his speech, Mr. Yamada began to speak. "Kambanwa, arigato, suma mason." Leo only caught a few words, but when he finished, Jessica calmly picked up her microphone and delivered a flawless English translation. This kind of on-stage translation required not only accuracy, but also stage presence. Her voice was clear, her demeanor poised, and her smile serene. When she finished, the applause was even louder than it had been for Dr. Sterling. Leo, sitting in the audience, clapped along with everyone else. Jessica sat down, her palms slightly damp. This was the biggest job she'd ever landed, a referral from a previous client. It was strange, she didn't have many friends, but she had a lot of former bosses. Most of the people she'd worked for had a good impression of her and would pass her name along for other opportunities. It was like the exchange student she tutored. The family now wanted her to teach their child tennis. She told them her skills were just average, but they insisted, saying she was patient and they just needed someone to practice with. She suspected it was also the exchange rate. For them, she was a bargain compared to tutors back home. Plus, they knew and trusted her. This translation job had come through a Japanese client. They tended to trust their own, and the pay was excellent. It looked like she was doing simultaneous interpretation, but she wasn't quite that skilled yet. Her Japanese was good enough for daily conversation, but her fluent delivery on stage was the result of thorough preparation. Mr. Yamada had a written speech, which he had translated and memorized beforehand. The expert lectures later would be even easier. The speaker had provided a PowerPoint, which she'd already translated. It was all about doing the homework. This was her first time translating for such a large-scale event. As she sat down, her heart was still pounding. The top she was wearing was snug, and she fought the urge to pat her chest to calm herself. She finally allowed herself to relax and properly look at the audience. While speaking, she hadn't focused on anyone, just like an assistant on a live stream, smiling and speaking to an empty room. Now that the opening remarks were done, she could finally take in the crowd. Her heart skipped a beat. Was that Leo Foster, sitting in the second row on the far right? She thought her eyes were playing tricks on her. How could he be here? She looked closer at the name card in front of him. It really said Leo Foster, special guest. And he was wearing a white top with a navy vest, the exact reverse of her own outfit. They looked like they were wearing matching couple's clothes. She saw him clapping, and the sound made her heart pound even faster. The sight of him applauding for her sent a jolt through her, and she felt her cheeks flush. For a moment, she was completely lost in thought. Dr. Sterling was speaking now. Then it was Mr. Yamada's turn again. When he finished, he looked over at her. Jessica lightly tapped her microphone and tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear. Her hair was styled with clips and spray, so nothing was out of place, but a few intentionally loose strands framed her face to make it look better. Normally, she wouldn't fidget with her hair. It was a sign of insecurity. She always tried to hold her head high, chest out, back straight. But in that moment, she couldn't help the small, nervous gesture. Then she began to speak, her smile confident and her voice steady. When it was over, everyone stood. The opening ceremony was finished. As she came down from the stage, she found her assigned seat in the front row, next to Mr. Yamada. Leo's seat was directly behind her. She felt as if his eyes were boring into her back, like a zipper that could be pulled down at any moment. Leo hadn't expected to run into Jessica here, of all places. She was incredible, speaking on stage without a hint of nervousness, her voice sweet yet professional. This woman is destined for great things, he thought. Seriously, gender aside, she was just that impressive. In his dorm, the only one who could speak that confidently on stage was Alex, and he was the grandson of a politician who'd been trained for it since childhood, giving speeches where his uncle was a judge. Next up were the expert lectures. Leo quickly set a work task for himself in the system: attend seminar. One expert from each country came up to discuss the history and culture of tea. It felt like they were each just showing off. The content was a bit dry, and no one seemed to be paying close attention. People were either daydreaming or on their phones. To maintain a semblance of decorum, at least no one was talking. Thanks to Jessica's beautiful and engaging translation, the Japanese expert's lecture was slightly more captivating. Leo, treating it as a task, not only listened but also took detailed notes. As Jessica translated from the stage, she saw him diligently writing in the audience, and it made her speak with even more focus. When it was the American expert's turn, she would step aside, smiling at the audience, trying to maintain her composure. From her spot, she could see her reflection in a polished pillar on the stage. No mistakes. Posture straight, hair neat, clothes tidy. That was all that mattered. After the lectures, the morning session was over. It was time for lunch. The afternoon would be dedicated to the tea brewing and cultural exchange activities. Lunch was a buffet, so Jessica didn't have to stay with the delegation. She was relieved to have some time to herself. Leo, who had done nothing all morning but change clothes and listen to lectures, headed to eat as well. Dr. Sterling was busy with other guests and told him to go on ahead. The lunch spread was magnificent. The hotel buffet normally cost $60 a person, so the quality was high. You just had to give your room number to get in. But today, the room was so crowded it was hard to find a seat. Leo filled his plate and wandered around, looking for a place to sit. Suddenly, he heard someone call his name. "Leo, over here." He turned and saw Jessica, who had saved him a seat by placing her bag on the chair next to her. There were no other empty spots nearby, and he didn't know anyone else, so he didn't hesitate. He walked over with his plate. The table was a small round one, and they were sharing it with another group. It was meant for 4, but a party of 3 was already there, so with an extra chair squeezed in, it was a tight fit. Leo and Jessica were sitting very close to each other. Leo noticed that Jessica was loading up on fatty meats. He would have thought someone so meticulous about her appearance would be more careful about what she ate. But her plate was piled high with various meats, with only a few token vegetables. She would eat 4 bites of meat, then, with a guilty frown, force down a small piece of broccoli. Leo wasn't a big fan of vegetables either, but he wasn't that dramatic about it. They ate in a slightly awkward silence. Even though she had called him over, she hadn't said a word since he sat down. In truth, Jessica was a nervous wreck. She was thankful the room was noisy. Otherwise, she was sure he would hear the sound of her chewing. Leo, on the other hand, was just hungry and focused on his food. The buffet had plenty of options. The rice was a bit hard, but the stir-fried noodles and fried rice cakes were delicious. Jessica was too nervous to taste her food. She didn't even know what to do with her legs. It was a strange, flustered feeling. Leo, however, wasn't nearly as tense. He just felt a little awkward. Ever since that incident at her apartment, it was like having stumbled upon a classmate's family drama. Uncomfortable for everyone involved. He figured it was probably even more awkward for her. Her hand was stiff as she picked up her fork and spoon, placing them down with delicate precision. Leo ate while scrolling on his phone, replying to a text from Stella. Then he tagged Sean in their dorm group chat. "Leo Foster at Sean Riley. They're having a tea brewing performance this afternoon. You can come film. There's a room for you to stay tonight, too. Sean Riley, on my way. Jordan Davis. Is it fun? Need someone to carry your bags? Leo Foster. It's okay, not super exciting. But I saw your goddess, Jessica Monroe." He snapped a picture. Since he was sitting right next to her, he leaned over and spoke to her while she was focused on her food. "I just took a picture of you. I'll send it to you." Jessica, with a mouthful of rice cake, seemed lost in thought. She didn't speak, just nodded. Leo sent her the 4 photos he'd taken of her on stage. He'd originally intended to take them for Dr. Sterling, who had proudly posted the pictures Leo took at Professor Reed's house on his own social media. Dr. Sterling was clearly a fan of being photographed, so Leo figured he'd take a few good shots for him. It was an easy way to complete his task. But Jessica had looked stunning on stage, radiating a confident beauty. It was clear why she was considered one of the prettiest girls in their department. It wasn't just about makeup or a sweet voice. Her ability to command a stage was a huge part of her appeal. While sending the photos to her, he dropped one in the dorm chat. He wasn't sure how other dorms operated, but this was normal for them. It was a public photo, so it wasn't creepy. Still, he felt a little guilty with the subject of the photo sitting right next to him. Jordan Davis. Whoa, 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 she's gorgeous. My goddess is so beautiful. Alex Young. The look in her eyes in this picture is intense. Leo, be careful. Leo Foster. Don't be weird. Jordan Davis. I agree. It looks like you two are making eye contact. Watch yourself, Leo. If my goddess decides to have her way with you, just let it happen. Don't make it difficult for her. Leo Foster, get lost. Are you coming or not? Jordan Davis, my goddess is my life, but for Black Myth, Wukong, I would sacrifice my life. Jessica heard her phone buzz. She picked it up and opened her messages. Her chat list was topped with pinned group chats. She had to scroll down to find a message from Leo. She never deleted his messages, but worried that Stella might see them if she left her phone lying around. Not that Stella would ever snoop, but she didn't want to risk it. So she pinned a bunch of groups to bury their conversation. Sometimes she felt like her feelings were a rat hiding in the sewer, unseemly and afraid of the light. But her heart was her own. If she couldn't act on her feelings in the real world, could she at least let them run wild in her mind? She opened the photos he sent. They were beautiful, better than her own selfies. She always felt she wasn't photogenic. Photos made her look short, and her face shape wasn't ideal. But in these, she looked lovely. The traditional outfit was sleek and clean. There was one of her sitting quietly, her face in profile, long hair cascading down. Another was from when she was speaking, a smile on her face as she looked forward. Her smiles often felt forced, but in the photo, it looked genuine and confident. There was even one from the moment she was looking at him, just before she quickly turned away. In the final one, she was standing, translating. The stage looked like it belonged to her alone. A sliver of light from the projector hit her face like a perfectly placed sunbeam. He had told her he was painting her, and she had been dying to ask what it looked like. But he hadn't brought it up again, so she had to suppress her curiosity. She hoped she would get to see it someday. For Jessica, it was a lunch filled with anxiety and small moments of happiness. For Leo, it was a decent but unremarkable meal. He'd been eating so well lately that he was becoming picky. As he ate, the system's mechanical voice sounded in his head. Host has diligently completed the task, attend seminar, and has taken detailed notes. Reward, buff, basic Japanese comprehension, 1 day. That was a pretty useful reward. He enjoyed watching Japanese anime, not the other stuff, and knew a few phrases, but this was different. After lunch, Leo decided to head back for a quick nap. It had become a good habit. A short rest in the afternoon left him feeling more energized for work or study. Humans were fragile creatures, after all. Get too cold, you get a cold. Get too hot, you get heat stroke. Get too sad, you get depressed. Jessica said she was also going back to rest. She wanted to walk with him a little longer. She still had translation work in the afternoon and wanted to review some potentially obscure terms, but she could do that later. The afternoon session didn't start until 2:30. They got up and walked back together, a young man and woman in a historic, elegant hotel. The corridors were lined with latticed windows, and the midday sun cast shadows of carved cranes and clouds on the white walls. On the gray-tiled roof of a nearby building, a small kitten was curled up, basking in the sun. It had chosen the perfect spot, where the light warmed its round rump while its head stayed in the shade. Jessica loved cats, their laziness, their selfishness, their freedom. She paused to watch it. Should I call it down? Leo asked. Jessica smiled. Don't bother. Cats are too proud. It won't pay any attention to you. Leo had the animal magnetism buff, especially with young animals. He looked up at the roof and let out a few soft meows. Jessica stood by laughing. It was so childish. But then, the kitten lifted its head and looked at Leo with curiosity. It stood up, its fur bristling and tail straight up, and then it leaped from the roof. Leo caught it in his arms. The kitten landed softly, sniffing him, still a bit dazed. He held the cat and smiled back at Jessica. She was stunned. Leo gently stroked the kitten's back, then placed it on the ground near a pillar in the corridor, a spot that was sunny but sheltered from the wind. Just then, a few of the Japanese delegates came out and saw them. Jessica greeted them politely. Leo's new buff kicked in, and he understood. One of the young men asked Jessica in Japanese, Lin-san, is that your boyfriend? Jessica replied in flawless Japanese, No, mister. Mikami. He is my most important friend. A full stomach makes you feel a little lazy. Jessica assumed Leo didn't understand Japanese. In that language, the phrase, Anata, Ga, Ichiban Daiji, you're the most important to me, is a subtle, roundabout confession. To call someone your most important friend was to express affection while also clarifying he wasn't her boyfriend. After greeting her clients, Jessica rejoined Leo. Walking together, both dressed in traditional style, clothing amidst the classical architecture, they made a picturesque scene. The walk from the banquet hall to their rooms wasn't far. It was a straight shot down the corridor and a right at the end. As it turned out, they were staying in the same building. They entered the lobby and got into the elevator. Since the buildings were historically styled, they were only 3 stories high. Both their rooms were on the 3rd floor. Fortunately, other people got into the elevator with them. Otherwise, the feeling, Jessica didn't know how to describe it. Guilt, maybe. The elevator opened to the right. Jessica's room, 1319, was just a few steps away. Leo's was at the very end of the hall. He thought it was a bit of a coincidence. He also noted that her room was on the north side of the building, which meant it got less sun. Jessica said goodbye at her door. Leo, not wanting to seem like he was peeking in her room, kept walking without pausing. She went inside, closed the door, and collapsed on her bed, staring up at the beautifully carved beams and the yellow-shaded lamp on the ceiling, where tiny figures seemed to dance. Back in his room, Leo felt none of Jessica's quiet turmoil. For him, the lines between like and dislike were clear. He had nothing but respect for Jessica. Any of her nervous, cautious behavior went completely unnoticed by him. It was like the day he first met Stella. He had been completely focused on his own singing, a clueless peacock displaying its feathers for an audience of no one. That's just how fate worked. He lay on his bed and video called Stella. When she answered, she wasn't in her dorm. The background was luxurious, with a spiral staircase. She was at her family's home in Bridgeport. She walked to her bedroom, closing the door before she spoke. They didn't talk about anything special, just the usual daily check-in. What they ate, what their plans were for the afternoon. They were at a stage where they told each other everything, short of a bathroom report. So Leo mentioned he'd run into Jessica. Stella paused for a moment. I didn't know she was going. I must have missed it since I came home. I didn't know either until I got here. By the way, I invited Sean to come over. He'll probably stay with me tonight. The room is plenty big, Leo said, turning the camera to give her a quick tour. Stella saw the large bed and the freestanding bathtub and couldn't help but laugh. Won't it be awkward for two guys to share a bed? I checked, it's fine. It's two single mattresses pushed together, bigger than a regular king. I should have asked for a room with two beds when I checked in, but I forgot. Well, you should get some rest. Yeah, I'm planning on a 30-minute nap. Just before they hung up, Stella added, you look really good in that outfit, by the way. A grin spread across Leo's face. He jumped off the bed and admired himself in the full-length mirror. It did look good, but hearing Stella say it made him feel even better. He'd have Sean take some pictures later to send to the family group chats. He lay down and scrolled through a couple of TikToks, then forced himself to put his phone down. A half hour wasn't enough for scrolling. 2 hours could vanish in the blink of an eye. It was always when he was short on time that the urge to scroll was strongest. He moved his phone out of reach and lay down. The room was too bright. It was harder to fall asleep than in the dorm. The large, beautiful corner window looked out onto the thick, yellowing leaves of a large tree and the tiered, tiled roof of the adjacent building. The view was like a painting. He didn't want to draw the curtains, but it was too bright to sleep. After a few minutes of trying, he gave in and closed them. When his alarm went off, he grabbed his phone and hit the button on the bedside panel. The curtains slid open, flooding the room with sunlight. Leo got up and splashed some water on his face. Just then, Sean called. I'm in the main lobby. Wait there, I'm coming down. The hotel elevators required a key card. Leo jogged down to meet him and got an extra card from the front desk. He saw Sean standing there from a distance and was struck by how much he'd changed recently. He looked professional, taller than Leo, dressed in black pants and a black jacket. He held a camera in one hand and wore a backpack. He looked like a seasoned videographer. Let's drop your bag off first, then we'll head to the conference hall, Leo said. They went up in the elevator, which was adorned with a beautiful vase of flowers that Sean immediately began filming. The long hallway was decorated with antique-style carpets and traditional bird and flower paintings. Most people would take such things for granted, but Sean was fascinated. He figured there were plenty of people like him who had never stayed in a nice hotel. The last time, at the hotel in the state capital, he'd been too preoccupied to film. This time, he was going to capture everything from the perspective of a regular student. Simple things, like needing a key card for the elevator, were a novelty. The room was huge, at least 4 times the size of their dorm, with a stunning window and high, carved ceilings. After getting his shots, Sean finally put his bag down. This conference puts everyone up in the hotel. That must be expensive. I don't know. There's probably a professional event planner. Like when Alex organizes stuff at the university, they're always sponsors. This is probably the same. There are ads for tea and teaware downstairs. Sean took a sip of water, used the bathroom, and then they headed to the conference hall. Leo went to report to Dr. Sterling, having already mentioned that he brought a videographer for his TikTok channel. Dr. Sterling had approved. Leo introduced Sean. A fine-looking young man, Dr. Sterling complimented him. Here, take a picture of Leo and me together. Sean raised his camera. Dr. Sterling was also in traditional attire, though his robe was much larger, with a bright green sash at the waist. He looked like a giant version of the frog from that travel game. The Japanese delegation brought a so-called tea immortal with them, a young guy, Dr. Sterling said to Leo. I need you to go head-to-head with him in a bit. Me? Dr. Sterling, I don't think I can. I'm a total amateur. Dr. Sterling sighed. It was hard to find people who would dedicate themselves to the art of tea anymore. He'd had a few promising students, but one had opened shop, one had gotten married, one had married him, and the only male student had gone home to take over his family's business. It was a common story. People wanted to put their skills to practical use. For many, studying tea seemed like a frivolous pursuit. It was only after they became successful later in life that they began to appreciate it, but by then they were more interested in tasting than brewing. So, when he thought about who he could call on, he had to look for an outsider. You'll be fine. We've even set up a competition with prizes. Our side is offering half a pound of authentic prime reserve dragon's robe. The Japanese side put up a 24-karat gold teapot, made by their master craftsman, Izumi. Leo's eyes widened. Okay, maybe I could give it a try. In the conference hall, a 3-story high jade mural dominated one wall. Its natural green hues were carved with the skill of a master, depicting a bustling city scene. From a distance, it looked like a single colossal piece of jade. In front of it stood a glass display case containing the prizes for the event. A round glass cover, illuminated from below, made the pure gold teapot glow with a soft, lustrous light. It was a classic example of Japanese craftsmanship, with a deliberately aged, hand-forged feel. Though made of 24-karat gold, it looked like a treasured antique. A plaque described the master craftsman, Izumi, whose works fetched exorbitant prices. Even a simple iron kettle could sell for thousands of dollars. Dr. Sterling found this particularly frustrating. Japanese artisanal goods sold effortlessly within their circles, while his own country's products were often haggled down to pennies above cost. The Japanese could shape a pot crookedly and call it philosophical. He had to be perfect and still got questioned. The teapot drew a crowd of admirers. Next to it, the dragon's robe tea was displayed with equal reverence in a glass humidor, kept at a constant temperature and humidity. It wasn't from the legendary mother trees. No one knew who really drank that tea, which sold for tens of thousands of dollars a pot. This was a second-generation cutting, but still of exceptional quality. The accompanying description was as thick as a book, a testament to its prestige. A section of the hall was cordoned off. It was the tea space prepared by the Japanese delegation, and it remained hidden from view, waiting for their competitor to arrive. Although Dr. Sterling claimed he was short on people, he did have his own team. He had called on Leo because he genuinely admired the young man's skill. Despite his unconventional background, the tea he brewed was simply delicious. After decades of studying and drinking tea, Dr. Sterling had come to believe that everything else was secondary. All that mattered was whether the tea tasted good. And the tea Leo brewed tasted very, very good. This is your senior, Joy. She'll show you the ropes. You can ask her anything you don't understand, Dr. Sterling said, introducing Leo to a tall woman. Joy, this is my old friend student. He has a remarkable talent for tea. You'll be in charge of him today. Dr. Sterling had other duties and couldn't stay. The first thing Leo noticed about Joyrun was her height. She wore the same style of layered white robes as Dr. Sterling, but on her, the effect was completely different. She looked not just ethereal, but also heroic, exuding a comfortable, confident aura. With her tall, slender figure, she was a 90 from the back, though her facial features were more plain and understated. The event was about to start, but the Japanese representatives had yet to arrive. Curious, Leo texted Jessica. Where are you? Jessica, surprised to get a message from him, replied quickly. I'm at the East Pavilion by the pond. Leo told Sean to keep filming the hall and went for a walk. He found Jessica sitting on a long bench by the water, dressed in her traditional tea attire, reading a Japanese book on tea ceremony. He figured the Japanese delegation must be nearby. Jessica was discreet. She knew when to give her clients space for private conversations. She looked up, surprised as Leo approached. He didn't say anything, just sat down a comfortable distance away. The view here is nice, he commented casually. Look, there are fish. Normally, Jessica was quick-witted and would have picked up the conversation, but now she was too nervous to think of anything to say. Her gaze drifted from the pond to the rock garden and the vibrant red maple tree behind it, its leaves like a constellation of tiny stars. Just as Leo settled in, he heard the voices of the Japanese delegation. He didn't need to hear his name. His Japanese comprehension buff was working perfectly. Their voices were not quiet, and with his enhanced hearing, he could make out their conversation clearly. They were talking about someone being sick, too congested to perform the tea ceremony. They were a precise people. You see, there could be no discrepancies. So I'm a Mason. Mr. Yamada, my ancestor once dedicated his life to making the most delicious soup from bean sprouts. The tradition has been passed down for 75 generations. My brother has inherited the bean sprout soup legacy, while I pursued the way of tea. I deeply regret that I failed to protect my health. I have a cold. I must withdraw. I cannot allow myself to disgrace our art. Hayaku Saikun. If you withdraw, we must change our strategy. The Chinese are a wasteful, vain, and superficial people, obsessed with money. Though some among them work hard, their nation lacks the discipline for deep, painstaking craft. They are impatient. They are followers of devils. It is time for our way of tea to cleanse their souls. Leo blinked. Did I hear that right? Devil worshippers? It sounded like they were about to emerge. Leo told Jessica he was heading back. She was left bewildered. Did he really come all this way just to sit with her for a few minutes? A blush crept up her cheeks. Back at the hall, Leo heard Dr. Sterling muttering to himself. They're masters of pointless ceremony. They'll kneel until they get bursitis, patellofemoral syndrome, chondromalacia patelli, osteoarthritis of the knee. Leo was impressed. The professor had clearly done his homework to be able to rattle off such specific medical conditions. We finally learned to stand up, and they immediately dropped to their knees, trying to drag us down with them. Tea is supposed to be about finding peace as simple enjoyment. They wrap it in mystical stories and ancient traditions until it becomes inaccessible. Are ordinary people not allowed to drink tea anymore? They have it completely backward. Just as he was finishing his rant, the Japanese delegation arrived. Dressed in flowing green robes with persimmon-colored sashes, they looked like a swarm of praying mantises sweeping through the hall, their wide sleeves and hems brushing against onlookers as they passed. The Japanese representatives, clad in their formal tea attire, moved with a theatrical gravity. As they entered, the screen hiding their tea space slowly rose, revealing a scene that drew gasps from the audience. It was like a perfectly composed ink wash painting. They truly excelled at this, an aesthetic of extreme, minimalist elegance that was perfect for photographs. Dressed as they were, they fit into the space seamlessly, creating a powerful, unified image. In that moment, they had already won the battle of presentation. The original tea space, while beautiful and ornate on its own, suddenly looked cluttered and unfocused by comparison. It was like putting a bouquet of vibrant peonies next to a simple, artful arrangement of chrysanthemums. With everyone assembled, it was time for the opening tea ceremony. Traditionally, a respected elder from each side would officiate, but the Japanese delegation humbly insisted that Dr. Sterling should have the honor alone. It was a classic move, both deferential and cunning. There was an unwritten rule that the person who performed the opening ceremony could not participate in the competition to avoid any appearance of unfairness. By yielding the stage, Mr. Yamada freed himself up to compete later, as his main competitor was now out with a cold. Mr. Yamada was the thin, older man from the opening remarks, with a high hairline and a habit of flicking his tongue out when he spoke. Dressed in the wide, flowing robes, he looked like the patriarch of a powerful family from a Japanese drama. He knew some English, but insisted on using a translator. Jessica, thank you for the paycheck, sir. One of the younger Japanese men was quite handsome and tall, defying the stereotype. The praying mantis robes suited his frame, giving him the air of a modernized samurai. Dr. Sterling was prepared for their tactics. As the ceremonial music began, he took the stage to prepare the first pot of tea. It was an opening performance, and Leo realized his professor had real substance. He might not be a conventional beauty, but as he sat at the tea table, his movements were as fluid and graceful as water. In that moment, even his traveling frog outfit seemed fitting and dignified. This, Leo thought, was what Alex meant by despise the enemy strategically, but respect them tactically. Dr. Sterling might criticize their obsession with ritual, but that didn't mean he lacked skill. He had the mastery to back up his critique. The hall, once buzzing with chatter, fell silent. Dr. Sterling's focus was absolute. His movements were calm and measured, like a master practicing Tai Chi. Time seemed to melt away. There were 7 or 8 cameras focused on him, with Sean blending right in among the professionals. The Japanese representatives watched intently. The one from the bean sprout soup family, Hayakusai, lamented that this moment of glory should have belonged to Mr. Yamada. Yamada comforted him, claiming he had no interest in such vanity, though the tense expression on his face told a different story. Jessica, the translator, kept a low profile, She was just there to do a job. She admired the performance on stage, but her eyes kept drifting through the crowd until they found him. It was strange. The hall was full of people, but whenever she looked up, her gaze landed on him, as if her eyes had a portrait mode that blurred out everyone else. She didn't dare look for long, afraid of getting lost in the feeling. Attendants in elegant dresses served a small cup of tea to each guest. Leo brought the cup to his nose. The aroma was light, elegant, and fragrant. He sipped it slowly, letting the liquid coat his tongue. A hint of fruit and flowers mingled with the clean, transparent taste of the tea. It was excellent, perfectly brewed, with no bitterness. After finishing, he cleansed his palate with the provided water. The opening ceremony concluded, and a palpable tension settled over the Japanese delegation. Despite their criticisms of the Chinese approach, they couldn't deny the tea was exceptional. Mr. Yamada looked particularly grim. He was old enough to have lost his taste for the sweetness of matcha, preferring the natural sweetness of tea itself. To admit his rival was superior was infuriating. But he had ceded the stage. The one who laughs last, laughs best. The competition was a straightforward duel between the two nations. Dr. Sterling's team had 3 members, and the Japanese team had 3. The Japanese representatives were surprised to discover that their translator's classmate was one of the competitors. Their young star, Mr. Mikami, hailed as a tea immortal for his grace and skill, came from a prestigious family. He hadn't been particularly taken with Jessica, but when she had called the other boy her most important person, her carefully hidden adoration had piqued his curiosity. He, a man of immense talent and status, had earned none of her attention, while she hung on her employer's every word. Jessica, of course, he's the one signing my check. Now, seeing that this boy also practiced the art of tea, Mr. Mikami couldn't resist asking Jessica about him. You study the way of tea as well. Jessica, who knew Leo had played a tea master in a film and had saved all the stills, feigned ignorance. We don't. I'm an English major, and he's in computer science. I have no idea why he's here. Mr. Mikami smiled knowingly. I see an air of nobility about him. Perhaps he is the heir to a great family. I understand your country is built on connections. It is a society of relationships. Jessica forced a polite smile. You are very perceptive, Mr. Mikami. What nonsense, she thought. Leo wasn't nervous. He was actually enjoying the spectacle, asking Joyrin questions and watching the proceedings with Sean. He figured it was all about exposure. The more you see, the less you fear. After dealing with the sheer intensity of Judge Cole, even professors like Dr. Reed and Dr. Sterling seemed downright approachable. It was like lifting weights. Once you can bench 180, 70 feels light. He was genuinely relaxed. The Japanese delegation began their performance of tinsha, or whisk tea. It was a highly ritualized presentation reserved for important guests. Leo had never seen it before. Combined with their minimalist tea space and the atmospheric music, it was visually stunning. It gave off an I don't know what's happening, but it's impressive vibe. Of course, a little cultural context revealed that whisk tea, which flourished in Tang and Song Dynasty China, had found its most ardent practitioners in Japan. Joy leaned over and whispered, every single one of their movements is prescribed. That's why they need their own space. Which hand to extend first, which foot to step with, which square of the tatami mat to stand on. It's all dictated by rules. They've subdivided their tea ceremony into more than 20 different schools based on these variations. So which school are they from? Leo asked. They're from a Eurosync school, Joy explained with a wry smile. Though some people around here joke that it's the unnecessary school. Leo had to smother a laugh. The ceremony culminated in a form of latte art, with designs more intricate than anything you'd see in a coffee shop. But when it came to the taste, Leo suspected there was a reason this practice hadn't remained popular in daily life. All that frantic whisking, turning the brewer into a human frother, resulted in a tea that was not good. His first instinctual reaction was that it tasted strange. With his enhanced palate buff, he tried to imagine it. Finely ground tea leaves, hot water, frothed it into a foam. He tasted moss after an autumn rain, which was apparently a sign of a masterfully prepared bowl. To him, it tasted like grass clippings. Maybe he just wasn't cut out for this. Seeing her junior's slightly furrowed brow, Joy couldn't help but smile. Her teacher had told her this young man was a natural, but he still seemed like a newcomer. She herself had come to tea late in life. Her family owned a tea plantation, but after graduation, her parents had pushed her out of the house to see the world, worried she'd never find a husband stuck on a mountain. It was through tea that she met Dr. Sterling, who recognized her talent and took her on as a student. The whisk tea ceremony ended. Everyone drank, applauded, and maintained their composure, even if they didn't enjoy the taste. Next was the main event, the tacha, or tea battle. Mr. Mikami, the tea immortal, was their champion. His good looks and aristocratic bearing were a huge advantage, as was his family lineage. But most importantly, he was a genuinely skilled tea master. In Japan, an invitation from him was a rare honor. The competition was designed to be as fair as possible. The tea was the same for everyone, taken from the same canister. The teaware was identical. The water was from the same source. The only variable was the person brewing. There were 10 professional judges and 10 amateurs, including a mix of nationalities to lend the event an international air. The Japanese representatives were focused on Joy-Ren, seeing her as their main rival. But as the competition began, they noted that the translator's classmate, Leo, looked like a complete novice. He even broke the compressed tea cake while trying to pry a piece off. Leo, however, was just treating this as another experience. The prize was tempting, but seeing it up close, it felt distant, too valuable to be real. The Japanese representatives, with their long, flowery titles, were comically self-important. And Joy was a walking encyclopedia, able to answer any question he threw at her. Compared to them, he was just an actor who had played a tea master. His only real advantage was that the tea he brewed tasted good. As the competition started, he set a task in the system, brew tea, and treated it like any other daily mission. The difference in styles was immediately apparent. The Chinese competitors were seated. The Japanese competitors were kneeling. The final cups would be marked with subtle, invisible to the judges' symbols to ensure a blind tasting. Mr. Mikami's performance was the most beautiful. He moved with an ethereal grace that made you feel honored just to be drinking his tea. Mr. Yamada, the elder, brewed with an air of immense gravity, as if his tea were meant to be sipped while closing billion-dollar deals. Joy's brewing was beautifully understated. Her plain face became an asset. Your eyes weren't drawn to her, but to the rhythm of her movements, which felt as natural as clouds drifting over a mountain. A live feed of each competitor was displayed on a large screen. Sean focused his camera solely on Leo. He'd had Leo's tea before. It was simple, comfortable, and delicious. The others, with all their posturing, were intimidating. From her corner seat, Jessica watched Leo. He was calm, his movements unhurried. They weren't as polished as the others, but as he worked, a small, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips. In that moment, Jessica felt certain that the tea he was brewing would be sweet. There are two of me in the world. One is brewing tea, and one is drinking it. The atmosphere in the hall was tense and sophisticated. The audience was large, but Leo brewed without a trace of affectation. He was just like Dr. Sterling, publicly decrying empty ritual, but privately a master of it. He might have claimed to be an amateur, but he had done his homework, absorbing books and articles on tea whenever he used his memory buff to clear his head from studying. He had discovered a side effect of the buff. His memory was a bit fuzzy the day after using it, like an engine running low on oil after a hard run. The only way to combat it was to keep learning, to keep converting new information into permanent knowledge. It was the classic good student gambit. Claim you didn't study, then ace the test. His approach to brewing was the most unadorned in the competition. When he had prepared for his film role, the director and on-set consultant had focused on historical accuracy. In that era, tea brewing was the domain of high-status men. There was no performance involved. The elegance came from the inherent grace of the act itself, not from a desire to show off. When you understand the essence of something, you don't get lost in the superficial details. Leo knew the point was to make the tea taste good. The tea provided by the organizers was unique, a 13-year-old golden flower white tea. During its natural withering process, the compressed brick of tea develops golden flowers, a beneficial, edible mold. A simple explanation? The blue cheese of the tea world. A more upscale one? Dry-aged steak. The process was a product of time and nature. The unique flavor came from the slow, uncontrolled transformation of the leaves. Good golden flower tea was now incredibly expensive. You weren't just buying tea, you were buying a decade of time. Leo had researched it out of curiosity. The key was the flowers. He carefully broke off a piece of the tea brick, targeting a section rich with the golden flecks. The Japanese team handled the tea with reverence. They had clearly studied it as well. Leo wondered what would happen if he took a fleck of the golden flower to a biology lab. Was it still alive? Did it still have bioactivity? That would explain how the flowers could continue to spread over time. The tea needed a specific environment, not too damp, not too dry, to mature properly. It was a process that couldn't be replicated artificially, which was why it was so valuable. Treating the golden flowers as a living culture, Leo deviated from the standard procedure. 4 aged teas. The first 2 infusions are typically done with boiling water and then discarded to wash away any storage-related dust or mustiness. For his first rinse, Leo let the boiled water cool slightly. He held the kettle, hesitating for a moment before pouring. He watched the leaves gently unfurl and the golden flowers dissolve into the water. He sniffed the aroma, took a tiny sip, then discarded the liquid. A faint fragrance lingered in the cup. For the second rinse, he used water at its hottest, pouring it directly over the leaves. This time, the aroma that filled the serving pitcher and the cups was much stronger. Again, he took a small taste before pouring it out. Seeing him taste the rinse water, Mr. Mikami dismissed him as an amateur. Then came the first infusion that would be served. Normally, the third and fourth infusions of tea are considered the best. Leo's theory was that the first, gentler rinse woke the golden flowers up. The second, hotter rinse gave them a scalding bath to fully awaken them. By the third infusion, the flowers and the leaves would have reached a perfect simultaneous bloom. He brewed the tea, smelled it, and took a sip. It was good. A rich, mellow flavor, almost like a fine liquor. Mr. Yamada's empty cups had been the most fragrant after the rinse, a trick that impressed the onlookers. But Dr. Sterling, watching from the side, knew the old man was already out of the running. By blasting the leaves with so much heat up front, he had front-loaded the aroma. The subsequent infusions would inevitably be bitter. As for the tea immortal, Mr. Mikami, his technique was flawless, every movement precise like a top-tier AI. But could tea really be quantified and perfected by mechanics alone? The judges, a mix of experts and amateurs, began their blind tasting. There was no way to know who brewed which tea. The final cups were distributed. Leo drank his own. The taste was excellent.